What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here with another installment of Louie T Network podcast. A lot to get to over this weekend that has transpired, some things that have happened today. Going to be a busy week. So we got to touch on a lot of topics tonight. The Jerry Sneed was traded. Raiders talking about trading up for quarterback or at least taking one in this draft. Broncos talking about potentially moving up. We know the Cardinals may be that target space for a lot of teams, including the Minnesota Vikings, who made it abundantly clear they would like to move up. Rule changes are running rampant, and we've talked about a lot of these rule changes and how some of them were another, to me, stain on the game defensively. It's already tough as is for defensive players to play the game. And now yet another rule. And this one hits a little bit different for me because the pushback has been almost unanimous. So we'll touch on that here in a bit as well. And not to mention a number of other proposals that they will vote on. These owners will vote on this week. So much to get to. Let's not waste any time nor delay. You're locked into the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 407th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, a lot to get to, as I mentioned at the top of the show. However, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about March Madness. I told you guys last week that the week was going to be abbreviated because of March Madness. I don't follow college basketball nearly as close as I once did, but that doesn't stop me from being enthusiastic about March Madness. Now, I couldn't tell you who was who. Hell, I didn't even know who the number one seeds were. This was the first. Did I fill out a bracket last year? No. So this is the second year in a row I didn't fill out a bracket, but this was the first year where I literally showed up right as March Madness took. I didn't watch any of the tournaments, nothing. So I literally walked into March Madness blind this year. Couldn't tell you who was good, who wasn't, what teams are supposed to be on upset alert, what teams are, a good matchup for this team, that team, because I didn't fill out a bracket, so I didn't need to know that information. And, normally there is a stress level involved with watching some of these games. Adds a little touch of excitement when you've got a little something on it. For me, it usually would be, I picked this team in my bracket, but I didn't fill out one this year. But in my mind, I had filled out a bracket, right? Like, okay, I think Kansas could lose in the first round because they were down. I did know they were down one of their best players. So things like that, I picked them in my head. But if I had made a bracket, it would have been destroyed literally day one. There were so many upsets, not as many buzzer beaters. I don't think we had an actual buzzer beater to win a game. Now, there was a dramatic buzzer beater to tie a game and send it to overtime in the Houston, Texas A&M game, which was a ton of fun to watch. I was watching another game. I want to say it was Grand Canyon and somebody. And that was a fist fight. That game, literally the officials, you swallowed their whistles and say, hey, y'all go for what you know. And that one was just crazy to watch. That was a lot of fun. Duke advancing it wasn't, you know what? I was more nervous about the Vermont game than I was the James Madison game. I had so many people tell me, well, this is where your road ends against James Madison. And I got pissed off to the point where I told anybody that would listen, we're not losing to James Madison. I was more afraid of Vermont, and for good reason, because had Vermont been able to make shots, we would have lost that game. Our offense was inefficient. We looked a little uptight, and you could see the pressure was there, right? You could tell, having gotten bounced in the first round or the first game that they played in the ACC tournament, not finishing the season off that strong, getting swept by UNC, all of that stuff had weighed on them, and it didn't go away going into that Vermont game. And had Vermont been able to make shots, we would have lost, but they didn't. And so we prevailed. And then we came into the James Madison game kind of just like, it's just whatever. Let's just go out and play ball, man. Let's just go play how we know we can play. And I told my buddy, he's also a Duke fan. I said, the key, I told him this having watched probably 2 Duke games all year long, because I can assess how good or not good Duke is. And that usually is the way that I come up with whether I'm going to invest time and energy into this Duke team or not. Is generally how I feel about the one game that I finally watch. And I watched the game earlier this season, and it was a meaningless game against Syracuse at home that we were supposed to win, and we did, and we weren't super impressive in it. But those are the types of games I want to watch, right? You know, sans for those games early in the season when we play in one of these big tournaments, and it's usually against a Michigan State or a Kansas, and it's usually 2 against 4 or 4 against 5 or 1 against 3 or something like that. That gives you a good indication of how good you are or could be as well. One year we played Gonzaga, we beat them, and that gave me a little bit of hope. And I watched the players, because every year now, it's not like how it used to be at Duke, where guys would stay, at least 2 seasons, usually 3 or 4. We've turned into Kentucky now. And really, that's the landscape of college basketball. If your guys are good, they're gone after a year. So every year it's a new Duke team. It's hard to really know until you watch. And I told him after watching, one game this season, the key to this team is going to be the ability to shoot. And our best shooter is Jarrett McCain. And it didn't take me but one game to figure that out. And I said, if Jarrett McCain is knocking down shots, we're going to be tough to beat. And if he can just bring Tyrese Proctor along with him, we'll have a shot. Anything you get from Mark Mitchell is a bonus. Flip is going to have to be Flip. And he caught a lot of flack after the first game for not shooting. He only scored 3 points, had one field goal attempt. And he did the right thing. He played the game the right way. They doubled him, and they made it a concerted effort, and they went in with the game plan of Kyle Filipowski will not beat us, which I thought was a flawed game plan initially, because I'm like, Flip's good. He's not that good. Okay. Flip's college good. He's not NBA dominant good. You don't have to double team him. Just live with the results. He is skilled, but Flip isn't dominant. So you don't need to double him. He's not Zach Edey or something like that. He's not the big DJ kid from NC State. You don't need to double him. You're fine. But yet Vermont decided we're small down there. We're not big. We don't have any pause. We don't have any size on the block. So we're going to double them. Okay. Well, shooters make shots. They didn't. I had a feeling that James Madison wasn't going to double Flip, and they didn't, and they shouldn't, and I wouldn't double him. But they moved the ball well. We beat them up on the boards, and Jarrett McCain was in fuego. Started the game 6 of 6 from deep. For much of the first half, he had more points than James Madison, and we cruised to a damn near 40-point victory. And so it sets the stage for the Sweet 16. I don't think any real upsets took place. Like, there shouldn't be too many brackets that have been destroyed if you kept it pretty much basic and chalk. I think All of the 1 seeds are still intact. Although Houston got a hell of a scare from Texas A&M, but all the 1 seeds are intact. And really UConn, UNC, and Purdue weren't challenged at all over the weekend. And then I think all of the 2 seeds are intact as well, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the 3 seeds got beat up pretty good. So did the 4 seeds. I believe the 4 seeds did. I know there were a number of, there's always a lot of 5-12s and, 6-11s and things of that nature. But NC State continues to play hot basketball. And so they took out a 6 seed, and they're going to find themselves in the Sweet 16. You know what's funny is they talk so much shit about the ACC. And I do keep up with this kind of stuff. It's not hard to keep up with this. And how down of a year it was in the ACC. And they're giving all this love to the Big East. And it was a good conference this year. I do know that as well, because they're undefeated or whatnot. But I said, well, what about the ACC? There are 16 teams, in the Sweet 16. A quarter of the Sweet 16 is their ACC teams. Clemson, NC State, North Carolina, and Duke. So what are we saying? Like, the only team that didn't win, and I usually don't count those first 4 in games or whatever, but those count, I guess, too, theoretically speaking. And UVA lost. So that would mean that the ACC technically isn't undefeated. But I don't even count those games. I don't start counting them until you actually get into the field of 64. But again, that is a part of the tournament and the bracket. So whatever. But usually, this is how you know it's not a real part of the tournament. I don't consider it a tournament win, getting in that way. So when teams win that first game on Tuesday or Wednesday to get in, and they're celebrating, I'm like, that's garbage, because nobody's bracket has to be in by Tuesday at 8:00. Nobody's bracket has to be in by Wednesday at 8:00, because those games are to just get in to the real bracket, the real tournament, which starts on Thursday. That's when I start counting wins and losses, to be honest with you. But what Colorado, is doing is great. That was a fun game too, Florida, Colorado. It's rare in college basketball, in today's day and age, where you see 2 teams playing against one another both hit the century mark. I don't know when the last time I've seen it, and the game not go to overtime. I don't know when the last time I've seen a game quite like that one between Florida and Colorado. That final score, I think, was 102-100. That's rare, right? That's a rare occurrence. And that's always fun, because usually these college games are played in the 50s, the 60s. If it's a good, efficient, up and down game, it's played in the 70s. That game was played in the hundreds. Both teams hit the century mark in a game that did not go to overtime. That is very rare for college basketball in this day and age. So that was fun to watch. I will say this, and then we'll move on. I don't want to talk your head off about college basketball and March Madness. I will say this, though. I feel like the college basketball games, and I can't tell you this or not in terms of the regular season and what they're doing in conference play and during the year, but these March Madness games were over officiated too many times. They're going to the monitor to look at this and to look at that. Is this a flagrant foul? Like, what are we doing? Just let the players play the damn game. Everything is, we got to look at this and we got to look at that. And it was really excruciating, some of these games, where as you got down to the bitter end, you're like, you just stopped the game. Now you're stopping it again. Then you stopped it 2 more times. Like, damn, can you just make a call? Like, this is ridiculous. I get all right, it's a close call. It went out of bounds. We're not sure who it went off of. Okay. You want to make sure the time is right. But damn, it got really bad, every foul. It's just a flagrant foul. We got to check the monitor. Gene Steratore, why don't you come in here and tell us, what do you think about it? Like, no, dude, it's a basketball play. Let's just play ball. Let's just play ball, right? Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the reason why you came here tonight. Let's talk some ball. Not NBA, not college basketball, but some NFL. Let's talk some ball. So let's start the night off by talking ball with the gym dropping session. Let me drop this gym on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So tonight's gym dropping session is going to act as a de facto in case you missed it. So there was a lot over this weekend. And if you were just focused and locked in on March Madness or just minding your business, not worried about anything, you could have easily missed some of the things that transpired over the weekend. One of the biggest things to take place was something that we thought was going to happen, but weren't sure if it was going to happen pre-draft, post-draft, or at all. Felt like it was going to happen because the Chiefs, after giving Chris Jones that massive deal, it kind of felt like they had to trade L'Jarius Sneed. They couldn't afford to keep him on that franchise tag. I mean, they theoretically probably could, but it's not something that they felt like would be ideal given the money that they were going to have to spend on Chris Jones and some of the other guys that they have on that roster, including Patrick Mahomes. So I didn't think once they made him available for trade, that was their way of saying we can't keep him. If they wanted to keep him, they would have. So finally, someone stepped up to the table and said, hey, let me take him off your hands. And that team, surprisingly, I don't know about you, I was shocked that it was the Tennessee Titans. I know they got a lot of cap space, but, you know, it's funny. I'm seeing a lot of Tennessee Titans fans saying the Titans are going for it. And I said to myself, going for what exactly are we? Going for what? This move seemed a bit odd for the Titans. Now, the Titans are in a division that's going to allow them to potentially compete this upcoming season. They could win the AFC South if the ball bounces their way, if CJ Stroud has a down year. You know, everybody just assumes he's arrived and he's this beast of a quarterback that's going to lead the Texans, you know, to big time seasons from here to the end of his career. And that may be the case. He may be a Joe Burrow. He may be a Lamar Jackson. He may be a Josh Allen. And he may have just gotten to that point, you know, earlier than any of them did in their careers, including Patrick Mahomes, who didn't even play really in his rookie season. That could be the case. He could be one of those guys, and he could be joining that AFC elite group of quarterbacks and may be ready to lead his team every single year. But as we've seen in football many a times, there are step back years after coming and bursting onto the scene and playing at a very high level. You've never quite made it in this league unless you've done it for an established period of time. Trevor Lawrence took the Jags to the playoffs. They won a playoff game. Everybody's excited. We're just assuming, well, it's the Jags division now. And then they wet the bed this past year, right? Started out hot, finished and fizzled at the finish line, didn't even make the playoffs, right? And we've seen that countless times. I mean, Jalen Hurts was almost the league MVP, was within, a minute of winning the Super Bowl, and you could argue had the greatest losing performance in Super Bowl history from, a quarterback perspective. And then he was not the same quarterback this past season. And we could argue as to why. A lot of changes in Philadelphia, maybe because of that. He did have an injury that he played through. There's a lot of things we can point to, but at the end of the day, he didn't follow that up the same way that we expected him to. So we see this all the time. Justin Herbert led the Chargers to the playoffs. Clearly, it's not all on the quarterback when you don't get there, but Herbert had an injury too as well, but they didn't play as well. Offensively, they didn't play well defensively at all. And so they didn't make it back to the postseason, right? So you just never know in this league. But the Titans don't even know if they have their quarterback yet. This is what makes this deal so interesting. So I'm getting ahead of myself. What was the compensation here? All right. So L'Jarius Sneed is traded to the Tennessee Titans for a 3rd round pick. Wait for it. Not in this year's draft, but in 2025, which that's the second time we've seen a major trade take place. And the compensation isn't really for this year, but rather for next year's draft, which seems a bit odd, but okay. They got a 2025 3rd round pick, did the Chiefs. And they swapped 7th round picks. Okay. Then after doing that, which was the big thing, because obviously if you were going to trade for L'Jarius Sneed, he wanted a new deal, which is why it didn't get done in Kansas City. You were going to have to give him a deal. And let's see what he ended up signing. See what kind of deal that L'Jarius Sneed signed. And then after he signed, was traded, he signs a 4-year, $76 million contract with the Titans, which is $19 million per year, essentially, $55 million guaranteed. So you're talking about a deal that is roughly $80 million. 55 of it is fully guaranteed. So, I mean, if we're just doing basic math in our head, if the deal was 80 and he got 60, that would be 75% of the deal. He was just shy of 80 at 79, and or was it 76? Excuse me. He's just shy of 80 at 76, and the 55. It's probably pretty still close to 75% of the deal being fully guaranteed. You're somewhere in that 73%, whatever the case may be. That's a lot of money guaranteed from a contract. So this one isn't as much about, and this is the most important. We get caught up on the big number, like, oh my God, this player signed a 5-year, $100 million contract. We just saw one of those handed out by the Carolina Panthers to offensive lineman Robert Hunt, formerly of the Miami Dolphins, at guard. And that looks, I mean, it's a fat number. It looks juicy. The agent loves it because usually your agent gets, 4% or 3% of whatever the totality of the contract is. So that's good for the agent. But the player doesn't see $100 million. The number that's most important is that fully guaranteed money. How much of that money are you walking away with? You get a $76 million contract and 55 of it is fully guaranteed in the NFL. That says a lot. So L'Jarius Sneed is getting broken off. Good for him after playing the kind of football that he has played over the last 2 years in particular. And having helped the Chiefs go back-to-back, establishing himself as one of the best corners in football. You need to get paid at this point. You've won. He's probably won 3 Super Bowls in his career already. So it's not about chasing a chip. We've talked about free agency and what some of the motivating factors for signing at a particular destination are. And money is always at the top of the list. Now, for everyone, those, reasons change. But he had already won the Super Bowl. The second biggest reason is you're chasing a chip. You're going after a winning organization because you want a chance to win because you haven't experienced nor tasted that yet in your career. Well, he's already hit the pinnacle multiple times. So it's not about winning. It's about, can I get to mine, right? Can I get my share of the pie? Can I get to the bread? And he did that. So good for him. But back to the Titans, okay? The Chiefs just wanted something. I told anybody that would listen at the beginning of this process, what do you think the Chiefs are going to get? I said the most you're going to get is a 2nd round pick because somebody's going to not only trade for him, but they got to pay him. And that's always the part that people forget about is, you're thinking about the compensation for the player, but then you forgot to factor in, I got to pay this guy too. So that's something else that, that's going to shave off a little bit of that capital that you're looking to get. So he was probably, without having to pay him, worth a 2nd round pick. Having to pay him turns it into a 3rd. That makes a ton of sense. But from the Titan side of things, I'm a little baffled because to me, L'Jarius Sneed was going to end up somewhere with a team that felt like they were close to doing something. Like, had the Buffalo Bills stepped up. And if I'm the Chiefs, there were certain teams I probably wouldn't have done business with. You do business with Tennessee because you don't see them as a threat. So, yeah, I can trade L'Jarius Sneed to you. That's not going to come back to haunt me. But I wouldn't have traded L'Jarius Sneed to the Bengals or the Bills or even the Chargers, right? And not to say that these teams had the necessary cap space to make this kind of move happen or were in a position to do this. But those are the types of teams that I could have seen him going to, right? I didn't see Tennessee necessarily being on that list. And while Tennessee has had a very active free agency period, they'll be a different team. How different are the Tennessee Titans? Does this move change how you feel about the Titans? Does this move make them a contender in their own division? I still look at the Titans. It still comes down to, is Will Levis the guy or not? That's where you start this conversation and the process with them. Life without Derrick Henry, what does that look like? We haven't seen them without him in 6-7 years. We don't even know what that looks like. So what does that look like? Yeah, they got themselves a running back in Tony Pollard, and they still got the kid from Tulane from last year who was a rookie and actually played well, but it's not Derrick Henry. None of those guys are Derrick Henry, right? They added receiver help in Calvin Ridley. I think they overpaid for Calvin Ridley, but that's not my business. I stay in my own lane and mind my own business. They got some stuff now. Is it good enough? Is L'Jarius Sneed going to put you over the top defensively? I don't know. Can you get to the quarterback consistently? I don't know. I guess we'll find out how much of a difference L'Jarius Sneed makes for the Tennessee Titans defense. I was shocked that they were the team to step up, but good for him, good for the Titans, and good for the Chiefs. Everybody wins in this situation, right? Anyway, I digress. Some not so important, but nonetheless draft fodder to throw out there in case you missed it. Denver Broncos head coach Sean Payton was asked over the weekend if the Denver Broncos were one of the teams that were seriously interested in moving up in the draft. And he said, sure, we're interested in moving up for a quarterback. It's no secret that the Broncos need a quarterback. They moved on from Russell Wilson and ate a hell of a lot of money, the most in NFL history, to do so. So it's no secret that they need a quarterback. What they're going to do to obtain one, what that quarterback looks like, still remains to be seen. The Broncos currently sit, I want to say that the Broncos sit at 12. I think the Vikings occupy the number 11 pick as we speak right now, and the Broncos sit at 12, and I'm correct. So the Vikings are 11, the Broncos are 12, and the Raiders are 13. There's a cluster right there at 11, 12, and 13 of three teams that need a quarterback. Now, the assumption right now is that the Vikings are going to move up to 4 with Arizona or 5 with the Chargers, depending on how things shake out. I still believe if you're Arizona and if you're the Cardinals or the Chargers, I wouldn't move. I'm sorry. If I got a chance to pair Kyler Murray with Marvin Harrison Jr. or one of these other receivers in this draft, I'm sorry. I'm not moving, bro. I get it. The Cardinals already have 2 first-round picks. How many first-round picks do you need in this year's draft? It's a good draft this year. I'm not saying it's not, but is it the best draft? Do you need 3 first-round picks? Can you really be successful having 3 first-round picks? Obviously, you can. If you draft well and you hit on all of those, it can help fast-track you being a good football team, but this is the struggle every year, right? These same conversations, quantity versus quality. You have a chance to arguably get the best receiver, and you could decide who that guy is. For months, that guy has been Marvin Harrison Jr. The more people I listen to that know ball swear it's Malik Neighbors. It's whatever, right? Either way, if you feel that strongly about Malik Neighbors, to the point where you think he's better than Marvin Harrison Jr. or vice versa, that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the can't-miss prospect, you got to take one of those guys. Who are we kidding? If you're the Chargers, you just traded away You're the best receiver probably in franchise history in Keenan Allen. You released his sidekick, his Robin in Mike Williams. You've got nothing at receiver. Now, yes, this is supposed to be a deep wide receiver draft class. We're fully aware of this. However, for as deep of a draft class as it is, which is better, having Justin Jefferson or three guys that look like Calvin Ridley or Jerry Jeudy? I'm just asking for a friend. Like, give me Justin Jefferson. Give me Jamar Chase. Give me the elite wide receiver. I don't need the three guys that are solid. Thanks, but no thanks. Okay. Generally speaking, and again, Justin Jefferson was like the 22nd pick or something like that in the draft. I get it. It doesn't have to be top 5. It doesn't have to be for you to find that guy. This is different though. Okay. Teams drop the ball. I remember talking about Justin Jefferson in that 2021 or 20, I think it was 2020 draft when he went, I think that was the same draft with CeeDee Lamb and what's the guy from Henry Ruggs the third, all of those guys. And for whatever reason, and I thought the only thing Justin Jefferson needed to do that draft was run fast. And he did at the combine. I don't even know why he fell that year. Joe Burrow went off. Justin Jefferson had like 180 million catches that year for like 2 million yards and 87,000 touchdowns. And I'm like, and somehow this guy ends up being like the 4th receiver taken in that draft class. And we killed the Eagles for taking Jalen Reagor right before him, I believe. But they weren't the only ones that missed, right? Outside of CeeDee Lamb, who went in front of him, I believe, and I'm pretty sure I'm not mixing up my drafts. I feel like all of those guys are in the same draft class. Outside of CeeDee Lamb, none of those guys are even in the same neighborhood, let alone the same zip code as, area code as Justin Jefferson. The only guy that's approaching his neighborhood is CeeDee Lamb. But he's not on his block. So, yes, I'm aware you can find guys. And if you feel that confident about this draft and the receivers that are in it, okay, knock yourself out. But for me, if I can get a Malik Neighbors, a Rome Odunze, or a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not trading out of that pick. I'm sorry. Not sorry. If I've got a chance to get Justin Herbert, an immediate upgrade in the form of a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors, I'm going to do that. So we'll see. Somebody's going to bite. Somebody's going to bite on what Minnesota's selling them, and they're going to move. So that brings me back full circle to the Denver Broncos, which is why we even started this conversation in the first place. Where are you going? Where are you going? You say you're trading up to where? For whom, right? Let's just look at the first 15 picks of the draft. No, matter of fact, let's just look at the first 13, because I think that's what's most important. You really don't have to worry about anybody else leapfrogging you from behind the Vegas Raiders at 13. This is where the quarterback activity in the first round is going to take place until you get to the back end of the first round, where maybe a team decides they want that extra year on that contract and could swing in there and grab a quarterback. But I think you're going to see potentially 5 quarterbacks going these first 13 picks. Now, with that said, you got the Bears at 1. We expect them to take Caleb Williams. You got the Commanders at 2. Don't know what they're going to do, but they're going to take a quarterback. New England, we're going to talk about them here in a second because they factor into this discussion that we're having right now. And, you know, the rumors that, the Patriots aren't sold on any of these quarterbacks. I don't know about that. We'll come back to the Patriots here in a second. Cardinals at 4 is a hot spot. It's the hottest spot in the draft if New England isn't interested in moving out of 3. 4 becomes the hottest spot. If the Cardinals say, no, we're good, thanks, but no thanks. We got 2 first-rounders already, so we don't need your first-round picks this year. That's overkill when we can get a guy here, and we still got a pick in the 20s from Houston, and we can get another guy later. We're good. We'll stay here, right? That would be my way of thinking. Sorry, not sorry. But, to each its own. They could decide that 11 and 21 and the Houston pick and having 3 first-rounders, not to mention you'll probably be able to finesse them for a first-rounder or a second-rounder next year in addition to the 2 first-rounders this year. Who knows? Maybe the Cardinals can't say no to that. I wouldn't blame them if they decided to do that either. Same with the Chargers. If the Cardinals turn down any advances from Minnesota, then the Chargers spot becomes the hottest spot in the draft, because the key is to get in front of the Giants. They need a quarterback just as bad as New England, Washington, and Chicago do. They got Daniel Jones. Nobody believes in Daniel Jones. Not even their head coach, who came out and gave the voted dread of confidence, the dreaded vote of confidence, rather, to Daniel Jones, saying when he's healthy, he's our starter. Translation, we need a quarterback. I'm telling y'all, I'm sending y'all an SOS message through this comment that Daniel Jones is our starting quarterback. Blink twice if you need a starting quarterback. Well, he blinked like 17 times. So you got to get in front of the Giants, or else they're going to take McCarthy or whomever, right? That's the prevailing thought. Who knows? The Giants might be sending a smoke screen, and they might not be interested in McCarthy, right? But whatever the case may be, they might be sending all of this smoke to force somebody in front of them so that the player that they really want, which is one of these receivers, falls into their lap. Anyway, after the Giants, the Titans don't need a quarterback. The Falcons don't need a quarterback. The Bears already would have taken theirs, so they don't need one. That's another spot where you could trade up potentially. But why would you trade in front of the Jets unless the Jets are interested in moving out of 10? They've solved their offensive line issues, with all the moves that they've made in free agency, but those are one-year Band-Aid solutions. They could take care of the tackle position for many years to come right here at 10. With all the quarterback activity, these tackles are getting pushed down. You're going to end up with one of the best tackles in the draft if you're the Jets, if you just stand pat. Then they're the Vikings. The Vikings are at 11, but the assumption is they're moving up to 4 or 5, right? So then there's Denver. Where are you going is my question. The package that you have to offer for moving up isn't anywhere close to the one Minnesota has. Minnesota has an earlier pick than you do. So you don't have any leverage over the Vikings right now. So if anybody's getting up to get the quarterback, it's Minnesota. So let's say Minnesota does get up to 4 with Arizona. Then what if you're Denver? Then what do you do? Are you still going to try to get in front of the Giants? Why? Why? Are we at the point now where we're fighting over? And look, he could end up being the best of these quarterbacks. Who's to say, right? But are we truly at the point where teams are going to be fighting over the Washington quarterback? Why am I blanking on his name right now? Let me find his name. Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix. Are we fighting over Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix? Is that what we're doing? I find that hard to believe. I get it, though. Again, supply and demand at the quarterback position. I said all of that to say this, and let me just go back to my original point, which was, where are you going if you're the Denver Broncos? Because if anybody is willing to trade out, you've got to think the team they want to trade out of, number 3 or 4 or wherever, the team they want to trade with is the Minnesota Vikings. They've got the most to offer. If I'm going to move from 3 if I'm New England, if I'm going to move from 4 if I'm Arizona, I need to get as much draft capital as possible, even if I don't plan on spending it. You think about it like this: if you're Arizona, the things you could do with 3 first-round picks, you don't have to spend all 3 of them. You'd have 11, 21, and let's say 27 would be your 3 picks in the first round. You could trade 21. to a team like, say, Washington, who might be desperate to get back into the first round to get a tackle. And now you've taken the 4th pick overall. You flipped it for 2 first rounders this year, right? Well, an additional first rounder this year. You've swapped 11. You've already made a selection at 11. I don't see you trading back out of 11. You're going to take a player. And who knows? If the draft falls the way you want it to, Rome Odunze is still there at 11. That'd be the dream scenario if you're Arizona. Yeah, we missed on Harrison and we missed on Neighbors, but we still got Rome Odunze. And we picked up an additional first rounder that we're going to flip with Washington to pick up an additional 2nd this year and a future first rounder next year, or an additional 2 this year, a 3 this year, and a 2 next year from Washington. And we already got a first rounder next year from Minnesota, right? Like, you could turn the 4th pick overall into the gift that keeps on giving, that puts you in a position to have so much draft capital for years to come that it's now this asset that doesn't have to go away unless you want it to, right? That's a very realistic thing if you're Arizona. So it's something to consider. But if you're Denver, where are you going? Who are you trading up with? What are you going to get? My mindset is you can stay at 12 and get Bo Nix. Now, I may be crazy for thinking that. I may be crazy, and somebody that I'm not thinking about is going to leapfrog Denver, maybe trade up with Chicago at 9 or the Jets at 10 and get in front of them. But it's pretty hard for me to think that somebody's going to be that desperate for Bo Nix. And again, after you get past the Raiders, let's go back to the draft real quick. After you get past the Raiders at 13, who also need a quarterback, and I think they're cool on Michael Penix Jr., but who's to say? New Orleans doesn't need a quarterback, although they probably should be looking at a quarterback, but they're not. Indianapolis doesn't need a quarterback. Seattle isn't interested right now after trading for Sam Howell. Jacksonville doesn't need a quarterback. Cincinnati isn't looking for a quarterback. The Rams could be looking for a quarterback. I don't think they're looking for a quarterback right now. The Steelers, obviously not looking for a quarterback after all they've done this offseason. Miami's probably looking more so to extend to it and to find his replacement. Eagles aren't looking for a quarterback. They just traded for Kenny Pickett anyway. We talked about Minnesota already with the 23rd pick that they got from the Texans. So they've currently got 11 and 23. I think I said 21. They've got 23. But they would already have solved their quarterback situation, you would think, by the time 23 rolls around. And that probably won't even be their pick, if we're being honest. That'll be Arizona or, the Chargers pick or whomever. Dallas isn't. Maybe Dallas should be looking for a quarterback, but they got Trey Lance still on that roster, right? Green Bay isn't looking for a quarterback, nor is Tampa Bay after re-ing up with Baker Mayfield. So you see what I'm doing here, right? Like I literally went through the rest of the league. Nobody else is looking for a quarterback. After you get past Vegas, everybody else is pretty much feeling good about their situation, at least good enough in the first round. Maybe they take a guy in the 3rd or the 4th or the 5th round, but nobody else is taking a round 1 QB. So the way I see it is, if you're Denver, just sit at 12. Like Minnesota, if they're going up, you don't have more than they have to offer. You can't beat them in an arms race to try to acquire as much capital as you can to get up. You can't beat them. They did the thing that everybody else probably who was interested in moving up probably should have done, which was be proactive and go get you an extra chip that you can move in the event that one of these teams, Arizona or the Chargers, are willing to come out of that spot. So you can't beat them in a negotiation race. They got more assets than you do. The Jets aren't interested in quarterback. Again, the Raiders could leapfrog you at 13 and get in front of you at 10 or 9. Right. Yeah, I'm aware. But again, if this is what we have to do to get Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., I'm not interested. I'm not giving up draft capital to get one of those two. I've said this all along. I think that McCarthy would be a great fit in Denver. He'd be an excellent fit. If you can't get JJ McCarthy, which it looks highly unlikely with the way things are unfolding, then just take Bo Nix. He'll be a great fit in Denver as well. Like, just stay at 12. We'll see what happens. Anyway, speaking of the Raiders at 13, in case you missed it, they talked about, or their head coach, Antonio Pierce, talked about their quarterback situation. And he said that Aiden O'Connell has been the consummate professional. He's been the guy that, steadied the ship last year when AP took over as the interim. And he's done nothing this offseason but continue to kind of take the position by the horns, so to speak. He's been in the building. He's been active. And guys have rallied around him. And AP's like, I like what I've seen from him. And he's going to be in the mix. Now, we've all pretty much dismissed any thought of Aiden O'Connell being around when the Raiders decide what's going to happen at quarterback. We've pretty much all done that. I'm guilty. I can't speak for you out there. I know I left Aiden O'Connell for dead in terms of, the quarterback. When they signed Gardner Minshew, I said, well, if they don't get a quarterback, Gardner Minshew's their starter. And they're like, not so fast, my friends. I still think the Raiders are going to draft a quarterback, by the way. Should they do that, there's no way Aiden O'Connell sniffs the field. But in the event that they don't, things get a little wonky. And again, I would be shocked if we get 6 quarterbacks here in the top 13. It could happen. It could happen. We've never seen 6 quarterbacks go in one round. We've seen 5 multiple times. We've never seen 6. To think that it could be 6, and not only could it be 6, but 6 in the first 13 picks is asinine. Of all the drafts, this one shouldn't be the one. Like, I'm not telling you that Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. isn't worthy of a first-round pick, but I kind of am without saying it. Like, I don't think that either one of them isn't worthy of a first-round pick. I'm just not feeling them going in the top 15 of the draft. That's what I'm saying. That's crazy that one of those two, probably Bo Nix, if I had to guess, is going to end up going in this top, 12 or 13. 12, if I had to guess. I don't see how Bo Nix gets past Denver at 12. But that's wild, okay? That 5 quarterbacks could potentially go in the top 12 picks. And 6 could go in the first 13 if the Raiders say, all right, shit, we might as well get ours. While everybody else got theirs, we might as well get ours. Let's not wait. Get cute and somebody else snatch up Michael Penix Jr. Let's not get cute. Mess around and the Rams take him at, 2019, or trade back with somebody and take him, trade back with Washington at 36 and take him, right? Like, let's not get cute. But that is crazy that we can see that many quarterbacks potentially go in the first round. We do this all the time, and I'm aware. And last year is a great example, right? Will Levis could go number 1 overall, which was crazy. I never bought it. But there were some people, it was enough of a distraction, and it was loud enough of a noise that I did a podcast episode on it. Now, it was denouncing that whole thing, but it was still, I still thought of it enough to do an episode on it. And he didn't even go in the first round. Okay. And I'd been screaming from the rooftops last year. He's not a first round pick. Now, he had some moments last year, including that Monday nighter where he brought the Titans back from like 13 down with less than 4 minutes to go in the game or whatever it was against the Dolphins, which was crazy. But we're sitting up here talking about all these quarterbacks, and only 4 might go in the first round. After you get past JJ McCarthy, everybody else could be like, yeah, we good, man. We'll just go and get something else. I don't think Denver's going to do that, but the Vegas Raiders could. They can say, you know what, we'll just roll with Aiden and Gardner this year, and if it don't work out, we'll try our hand at it again next year. We'll see. But Antonio Pierce he's not discounting Aiden O'Connell. If you're a Raiders fan, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then in case you missed it, the New England Patriots at 3 are trying to, create intrigue around the top 3, because really it's felt like a foregone conclusion for the longest time for those of us who were resolute in our Bears aren't going to trade the number 1 pick narrative. For those of us resolute in that stance, it's been 1, 2, 3, quarterback this entire time, and it really hasn't wavered at all, right? I think 1 is solidified now. We all feel pretty confident that we know what's going to happen there. Okay. At 2, I've been pretty adamant. The Commanders aren't even interested in trading out of the pick. Now, you're going to hear stuff, and we've heard some things over the weekend. Commanders are open to, trading the number 2 pick, yada, yada, yada. No, they're not. And our head coach has come out and said, yeah, it'd be pretty reasonable to, infer that we'll be looking at a quarterback. Yeah. Duh. Well, we already, that's not news. We already knew that. I expect the Commanders to take quarterback 2, period, end of discussion. We've heard that it'll take somebody moving mountains to get them out of 2. I just don't see a team giving that up. I just don't. Because I don't know what your definition of moving mountains is, but I'm talking about a historic haul, and we're not even getting up to number 1, bro. Like, that's what it would take for you to get me off of 2 if I'm Washington. So I don't think they're the team you need to call. So then you go to the New England Patriots, and they're like, hey, we ain't sure about these quarterbacks. And the reason they can say that, this is the reason why Washington shouldn't be interested. Washington's got plenty of time to decide who they deem to be either the best or the second best quarterback in this draft class. There's enough talent that Washington should feel really good about getting who they deem to be either the best or the second best quarterback. When you sit in that 3 hole, as the Patriots do, you could suffer from what the 49ers suffered from a few years back with Trey Lance, which is, hey, we just get the third best guy, whatever that ended up looking like, which we knew in that draft. It was Lawrence 1, it was Zach Wilson 2, and they just were going to take they were choosing between Justin Fields, Mac Jones, and Trey Lance. Nobody ever felt like Justin Fields was going to be the pick there. It was either going to be Trey Lance or Mac Jones. It later came out that Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones, and the rest of their scouting department and the front office members, including John Lynch and Adam Peters, all wanted Trey Lance. And so what I thought was the cooler heads prevailing took Trey Lance, and I thought it was the right move, and I still think it was the right move, even though it didn't work out. But it didn't work out because Trey Lance just stunk. He couldn't stay healthy. And in this league, we know time waits for no man. Brock Purdy comes in, takes him to the NFC Championship game. You're not getting your spot back, bro. It's that simple. So at this point, when you're at 3, you're kind of at the mercy of 1 and 2. They know Caleb Williams is gone. They don't know what Washington's going to do. And let's say that the guy that New England desperately wants is Jaden Daniels. Like, they're not interested in Drake May. They're not interested in JJ McCarthy, but they take McCarthy if you put a gun to their head, but they don't want Drake May, right? But they really, like, if you don't want them to move, Jaden Daniels is the guy that won't get them off the spot. Like, if he's available, that's their guy, right? So they're kind of in between a rock and a hard place, because on one hand, you're like, if Daniels is there, we're taking him. But if Washington takes him at 2, and he's no longer there. Now you calling up teams and saying, hey, we open for business, which is why if you're Minnesota, you don't want to move on the 4th pick yet. You can wait till draft day to do this. And if you're Minnesota, excuse me, you don't want to trade for the 4th pick, not knowing where New England stands. You see how this shit gets complicated and it could get really fugazi quick? Is because if you're Minnesota and you pull the trigger too quick and you go to 4, assuming that Chicago, Washington, and New England aren't moving, and New England is playing poker face this entire time, but they've already sent out subtle hints like, hey, we're not as blown away by these quarterbacks as some of y'all may think, but it's one guy that'll get them to turn their card in at 3, and that's Jayden Daniels. And again, I have no information. This is a hypothetical, right? He seems like the kind of guy that would fit in New England, though. The kind of guy that Gerard Mayo would be looking for. I could be wrong. It could be Drake May. It could be J.J. McCarthy, whatever. But let's just go with this premise that the guy that they want is Jayden Daniels. If he's not there, they're willing to trade out of 3. There's no quarterback here that's stopping them from getting the draft capital and all the assets that they're going to acquire from moving back out of 3. They don't love the other guys like they do Jayden Daniels. Washington takes him at 2, and all of a sudden on draft night, they get cold feet and they're like, nah, we good. Hey. And if you're Minnesota, you already traded up to 4. So now they're calling the Giants, they're calling the Raiders and all these other teams, and they say, hey, you want to get in front of Minnesota? I'm open. Hit me, right? So if you're Minnesota, you got to wait until draft day. You got to wait. And if I'm any team out there, I'm not doing business with Arizona unless you're willing to take the 4th best quarterback and you don't care. And you're willing to undercut Minnesota in the process trying to get to Arizona. Say Arizona gets a little antsy and says, look, we want a deal done before draft night, which if I'm Arizona, I don't, because deadlines spur action. That's how you put a gun to somebody's head and get the most bang for your buck, get the most value for your pick. As you wait till draft night when the stakes are high, the clock is ticking, and they got to make a decision. Now they don't have a choice. They got to give you what you asking for, or let somebody else come up there and get that pick. Minnesota's already declared how desperate they truly are, right? In all of this, they've already declared this with them trading up into this first round again to position themselves with 11 and 23 to move up. So they've already kind of showed their hand. We want a quarterback. We ain't even trying to hide it. If New England is serious about not necessarily loving this group, but maybe there's one quarterback that they love, that's the wild card. That could throw a monkey wrench in all of this. And I don't know if enough people are talking about that scenario, that there's one quarterback in particular that they love outside of maybe Caleb Williams. And I don't even talk about him anymore because I just assume he's in Chicago. That's been my assumption the entire time. But now with Justin Fields being traded, it's a foregone conclusion. He's the guy at 1. He's always been going number 1 in my mind. So that hasn't changed at all. I said whether the Bears were the ones making the pick or not, I couldn't say. But Caleb Williams was always going to be the number 1 pick in the 2024 NFL draft. That always was going to be the case for me. So Bears are taking him. Commanders take a quarterback. If it's not Jayden Daniels and the Patriots are like, yo, Jayden Daniels is on the board, we're turning our card in. Now, if you're Minnesota, now you make the deal with Arizona. But if Washington takes Jayden Daniels and the Patriots like, we don't want none of these dudes, who coming up to 3? And Minnesota's like, hey, we'll come up to 3. Because remember, they want the word out on the street is they want Drake May. They hired his former high school coach, this, that, and the third, and Josh McCown. And so, people are connecting dots, right? You can get to 3, you can get to him potentially. So again, and then if that happens and New England says, yeah, we're good, we're going to move back to 11, does that open the door for, say, a Denver? Now, all of a sudden, Denver comes into play at 4. Because now they can say, hey, we got J.J. McCarthy sitting right here. Let's go get him. right? And now Arizona moves out of 4, and you are able to jump the New England Patriots, who are still in front of you. If you're Denver at 11, you can jump them now and get to 4, get your quarterback. Or if you're New England, you could fleece Minnesota and then use some of the picks you just acquired, some of the capital, to get back to number 4 with Arizona. You'll still probably make out pretty good, right? Because what you gave up to move out of 3 should be more than what you have to give up to get to 4, if that makes any sense. Whatever the case may be, they could still net themselves a few picks on the back end and move back up to number 4 and still get the quarterback, a quarterback. These are all, different scenarios. A lot could happen. Nothing could happen. And it could just go quarterback 1, quarterback 2, quarterback 3, chalk, chalk, chalk. New England or Chicago, Washington, New England all take quarterbacks. And then the real fun starts at 4. Lot to discuss. Who in the hell knows what's going to happen? In case you missed it. And then there are these damn rule changes. Every year we have these same damn discussions about the NFL and how the NFL is Teflon and they can do no wrong and they can do whatever the hell they want because dummies like myself are still going to watch. At some point, though, when is enough enough? And I get the concept of wanting to protect players from themselves. I get the whole concussion thing and wanting to take the head hunting out of the game. I get it. And players are warriors and they're gladiators and they know what they're signing up for. And they much rather get hit in their head than their legs because they can still work. You can have 6 concussions. It's not ideal. And you're asking for trouble later on in life. But you can have 6 concussions and have a 13-year NFL career and make a bunch of money. But if somebody hits you in your knee the wrong way, your career could be over after 3 seasons. So guys are willing to risk what comes with getting hit upstairs versus getting hit where the money is, which is their knee. NFL, though, stepped in and said, nah, we can't deal with the lawsuits. This is bigger than y'all. We got to do what we got to do. This ain't really about protecting the players. This is about protecting the shield, right? It's always about protecting the shield. This whole banning the hip drop tackle, we knew once this thing got a name, I said, uh-oh, this is the beginning of the end of this shit. And when Mark Andrews got hurt on a primetime game on a Thursday night for everybody to see against Cincinnati, that's when I knew this shit is changing whether we like it or not. That's all it takes is for one high-profile game and an injury that happened on national television for people to start doing the outrage thing on social media. If social media didn't exist, this rule right now would not be changing. But there was a strong undercurrent of bozos who watch the NFL. This tackle is ruining the game. Another player is claimed by the hip drop tackle. And I said, shit, they gave it a name. So when you give something a name, you give it a face. Now we can direct the hate properly at something that has a name. When you're nameless, you're blameless. Because everybody's calling it 50 different things. So there's no one, focused hate towards something when it's got 18 different names. You can't quantify how much hate there truly is. When you give it a name and people can start associating the hate that they have or, the outrage that they have with the name, then you can quantify it and you can put it all in one place. So the league, I'm going to read you the proposal, right? So the rule, this is the hip drop tackle that was unanimously voted on, by the way. So this thing is passed already. The league has banned the hip drop tackle. So I'm going to go over all of the things that were the main, that are going to be the main topics this week at the NFL owners meetings, right? This was at the top of the list. First of all, they're not going to outlaw the brotherly shove, which is bullshit. Which is not football. That's rugby. But this is rugby right here. The hip drop is rugby, and they're taking that out because guys are getting hurt. Not that we didn't see players get hurt, and players get hurt all the time in those damn rugby scrums on those, brotherly shoves, but they're not getting rid of that. In an effort to emphasize player safety, the league is banning the controversial hip drop tackle. The language of the proposal calls for a 15-yard penalty when a defender grabs or wraps a ball carrier and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips or his lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's legs or below the knee. It's the type of tackle that Cincinnati Bengals linebacker Logan Wilson used on Baltimore Ravens tight end Mark Andrews that led to Andrews' Week 11 ankle injury. This is bullshit. And I was adamant about it when this happened. I said, you know what's going to happen, guys. You already saw the writing on the wall. The thing that frustrates me with this, one, there's going to be a gray area. Every time a player drops their weight, even if that player's leg, the player that they're tackling, his leg isn't trapped, they're going to throw the flag. And it's a bullshit because, again, if a guy's running, full head of steam, it's a tight end. He's 252 pounds. You're a linebacker at 227. What are you supposed to do? If he's running and he's 2 yards away from the first down and you got to stop his momentum, what are you supposed to do? I don't understand what you want a player to do in that situation. Let him drag your ass like a backpack for the first down. That's what I'm supposed to do because I don't want to. First of all, you're going to get fined. Like a lot of us don't associate. When you get a 15-yard penalty in a game, you get a yellow envelope in the mail or in your locker on Wednesday for a fine that you have to pay every time you get a 15-yard penalty in a game. So not only are you hitting me in my wallet, you're hurting my team as well. I mean, this is bullshit. And the part that sucks is the NFL has taken this upon themselves. They made this their axe to grind. And what good is the NFLPA if you're not going to listen to them? Are they only good for when it's convenient, when it comes to negotiating the agreement with the league? Is that the only time where their opinions are being heard, where whatever they feel matters? Is when you're trying to strike a new labor deal? Is that it? Because literally, I saw a memo sent out from the NFLPA denouncing the hip drop tackle and the rule, right? Like saying this isn't something the players want. We appreciate the NFL trying to look out for the behalf of the players, but the players don't want this. And there's some offensive guys that feel some type of way. And I saw something from, it was a running back. He used to play for the Dolphins, Kenyon Drake. Excuse me. Kenyon Drake said, I lost my ankle in week 4 of the 2021 season. And it was on a hip drop tackle, and something needs to be done about this. And so if you've experienced a hip drop tackle, sure, you're probably going to be on the side of getting rid of this. I'm going to tell you right now, it's still going to happen. You may get a guy or two hurt, but it's bullshit because defensive players are already at the mercy of the officials and the league as is. You can't play defense anymore. You can't play defense anymore. You can barely hit the quarterback, right? They created all these cockamamie rules. You can't land on the quarterback. What kind of bullshit is that? I'm supposed to get to him as fast as I can, but when I get to him, if you've ever seen the episode of Boondocks where they're practicing nonviolent passive-aggressive, non-violent actions against the whites. And I think his name was Sturdy Jackson or some shit like that. And he's doing everything in his power not to hit these white people, right? And he's ducking and they're trying to hit him. And he's laying their head down gently on the ground. And that's what this shit feels like. Like you're supposed to, as a defensive player, you're supposed to do everything in your power to make sure that this offensive player doesn't feel any pain. Don't put your weight down to get him on the ground. Don't hit him in the head, right? Don't launch above the neck, shoulder area, right? Can't hit the quarterback in his legs, can't hit the quarterback in his head. If you drop your weight on him, you could have perfect form tackle, but if you drop your weight on him, that's a flag too. Like, what are we doing here? There's already enough rules limiting what the defenders can do and can't do. This is ridiculous. And unless somebody stands up, they're going to continue to do this. The problem is who's going to take that stand? It's not going to be us as fans. We're going to bitch and complain like we're doing right now. And as soon as those games start in August in the preseason, we're going to shut up and we're going to take it and we're going to complain about the flags when they throw them in the preseason. And guess what? By the time we get to week 5, we won't be talking about this shit unless it costs your team a game or it's a critical play in a game and you go, this is bullshit. But you'll adapt and you'll adjust because we always do. And they know it. And that's why they do this shit. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. All right. Kickoff rules. This one I don't think has been passed yet, but I think it's close. And it could end up passing at some point this week. We'll see. But I'm going to give you how this works. So under the proposed format, kickers would still kick off from the 35-yard line. So that is something that I thought they were changing, that they would kick off from the 30, because if kickers are still kicking from the 35, what's to stop the ball from still traveling through the end zone? You still got big leg kickers that can kick it out of the end zone, like Joey Sly, who has a massive leg, and teams barely got to return any of his kicks because he kicked most of them out of the end zone. If he's still kicking from the 35, he's kicking them out of the end zone still. But anyway, under the proposed format, kickers would still kick off from the 35-yard line, but the other 10 players from the kicking team would line up at the opposing 40-yard line. So they would line up in plus territory at the 40. Okay. The receiving team would line up with at least 7 players in the setup zone. So they call this area the setup zone, a 5-yard area between the 30 and the 35. So they would be lined up somewhere between the 30 and the 35-yard line. So again, they'd have to be no more than 10 yards away from the kicking team and their 10 players. They could be as close as the 35 or as far back as the 30 if they want to be 10 yards away. But they got to be somewhere in there, the 31, the 32, the 33, the 34, the 35, somewhere in that neighborhood, right? Is what I'm gathering from this. That's the setup zone. So you got to be somewhere in there. Until the ball hits the ground, is fielded, or lands in the end zone, the kicker cannot cross midfield. So he can't cross the 50-yard line. So he kicks the ball off and he has to wait until the ball is either fielded, hits the ground, or lands in the end zone. And then the rest of the kicking team, along with those in the setup zone, cannot move until the ball does one of those things. It's caught, hits the ground in the field of play, or hits the end zone. Okay. Kickoffs would include a landing zone that stretches from the goal line to the 20-yard line. So if the ball lands anywhere from the goal line to the 20, balls landing in that zone must be returned or downed. So no more of this, you open your arms out and say, okay, ball is landing at the goal line, but it's going in the end zone. I'm not fielding this thing and walk away. No, if that shit lands at the goal line, whether it trickles into the end zone or kicks back into the field of play, you got to go pick that bitch up and down it, or you got to go and pick it up and return it. You can't just walk away and tell the official I'm good, you know. So a down ball would give the offense the ball at the 20-yard line. So if that ball lands, so they're trying to give teams incentives to kick it in the field of play. Because if they down a ball, sort of like a fair catch almost, you get it at the 20 in that area between the goal line and the 20-yard line, you get it at the 20. A kick that does not reach the landing zone would be treated as out of bounds, meaning the offense would start at the 40-yard line. So you can't surprise onside kick anyone with this rule, which sucks because you got to kick the ball to at least the landing zone, which is the 20-yard line. It's got to make it to at least the 20-yard line. You can't use a pop-up kick and the ball land at the 22. That's an automatic penalty, and the ball starts at the 40-yard line. So it's like kicking it out of bounds and not having it not make it to the end zone. So a kick that does not reach the landing zone would be treated as out of bounds, meaning the offense would start at the 40-yard line. So that's a penalty. Touchbacks would give the offense the ball at the 30. It was originally the 35-yard line under the initial proposal, but was tweaked on Sunday. That's a pretty, like, it's our, like, so we make a rule that prohibits the defense from finding ways to get guys on the ground. Now you want to give the offense the football at the 30-yard line? It's already hard enough to stop a team at the 25-yard line when they got to go 75 yards. They used to have to go 80 yards. When a touchback used to get it to the 20. Now you're trying to put it at the 30? And initially the proposal was the ball would start at the 35? What are we doing here, guys? I know you like offense and you want points to be scored, and that's exciting, but what are we really doing here? Anyway, what are we trying to accomplish? You want kickoffs back in the game that badly that you would sacrifice how much field the defense has to defend on every possession. Because most teams' kickers can still get it to the end zone. And if it's a touchback that goes into the end zone, which you're trying to prohibit them from kicking it into the end zone, it's going to be to the 30-yard line. That's bullshit. So now you're essentially telling your kicker, don't kick it with all your strength. Don't kick it too soft that it's a penalty. Make sure you kick it hard enough that it gets in that landing zone, but don't kick it too hard that it goes in the end zone and now it's out to the 30. What are we doing right now? Somebody help me, please. What are we doing? When the hell is this shit? I can't get jiggy with this shit. What are we doing? So now you're trying to make kickoffs some kind of mathematical equation that as a fan, on Sundays, if I'm a lay fan, I just want to sit down and watch a simple game. Once you get past all the minutia and all the rules, if you've been watching long enough, then football's pretty simple. You get 3 downs to get a first down, 10 yards. You don't get it by the 3rd down. You can go for it on 4th down, but if you don't, the other team gets the ball if you don't make it. Like, it's a really simple game. Now we got to do mathematical equations. Well, if you kick it in the end zone and it's like, I don't want to explain that to somebody. Like, my son is 5. I don't want to explain these kickoff rules to my son. His head would be spinning. So, son, if you don't kick the ball to the 20-yard line, then it's a penalty. Why is it a penalty? Because it didn't go into the landing zone. What's the landing zone, Dad? The area between the goal line and the 20-yard line. And if they catch it in the landing zone and they take a knee, then you get it at the 20-yard line. Why don't you get it at the 40? Because it's in the landing zone. What happens if they kick it in the end zone? Then you get it at the 30. Why not get it at the 20 like you do if you take a knee when it's in the landing zone? I don't know, son. Why not get it at the 30 for taking a knee in the landing zone like you do if it goes in the end zone? I don't know, son. Like, this shit is crazy. Now, they haven't voted this through yet, but reports are it's very close. If they continue to push this and somebody's arm gets twisted, it sounds like they're only a few votes away from this thing being enacted. It's crazy. This is wild. Play clock review is another thing that they've thrown into the mix. So they're trying to check, because, a lot of times, they had this unofficial, unwritten rule that officials would look down, look up, and if the play clock was at 0, they would look at the clock. If it was at zeros and they looked and the ball wasn't snapped yet, then they would throw the flag, which technically your ass is late at that point, but you got away with some shit. Well, teams they're not going for that shit no more. They're like, bro, wait a minute, time out. This dude, they just got away with a whole delayed game. And so in 2021, this is the one that they kind of used as an example. In 2021, officials may have missed a delay of game call against the Ravens right before Justin Tucker drilled a 66-yard game-winning field goal against the Lions. We all remember that. It was indoors, set the NFL record, and there was a delay of game there that they missed. So they're going to try to clean that up to where they get that as precisely as humanly possible. As soon as it hits 0, if you haven't snapped the ball yet, it ain't no delay. Like there used to be like this 1 to 2 second delay where, I look at the clock, it's at 0. Now I'm gonna look at you. If you ain't snap it yet, if it hits 0 and ain't nobody moving yet, it's a flag. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't really have a big issue with that. So there's a proposal to expand the crackback block rules, which I already hate these rules, because while I get it, when they tell you head on a swivel, but if you're an offensive player, you're not used to trying to track down a ball carrier. And so you're not looking around. Like defensive players know head on a swivel at all times. You play special teams, head on a swivel. But if you're running after somebody and a guy is coming from the opposite side of the field and he's sizing you up, like as an offensive dude, you dream about these opportunities, because defensive dudes always get to light you up. So if you catch a defensive dude sleeping, napping, running back breaks to the outside and you're chasing the play from the backside, or a pass is caught at one of your receivers, or the tight end catches a pass and he's breaking up the sideline and somebody's chasing him, and you come off of a deep route and you see a dude running full speed, but he don't see you. You like, oh yeah, I'm finna deplete his ass. And you going straight for the chest. It's all legal. But that whiplash that comes with that, when you don't know and you get hit, the whiplash is like a car accident. Your shit is gonna flip, and that gets you more so than the actual hit. It's the impact of that shit. And you going down like a ton of bricks. I've seen dudes really get hurt like that. So I get I remember Warren Sapp lit up an offensive lineman like that. I mean, shit, I think that was the reason they created the rule. He destroyed a guy. And I remember Sean Taylor, he crushed a dude on a kickoff, on a punt return for a touchdown by James Thrash one time. Just punished the guy. Pow! Jumped in the air, hit stick style. So I get it. I understand why. But let's see. I don't know the crux of this extension of this rule. So let's see what they're talking about. So these are what crackback blocks are considered currently, where an offensive player moves from the outer edge of the field towards the middle of the field, blindsiding a defender. That's already illegal. The proposed change would expand the rule to include players who go in motion and move beyond the center to block a defender at or below the knee. Okay, so they're essentially trying to get rid of that cut block when guys are going in that motion across the field and they cutting that backside defender. That's the play that Logan Thomas got hurt on against the Raiders, even though he was on offense. But what's the name of that damn defensive end? Damn, I can see his face. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. But he cut him and, tore his knee all up to shreds. You see that a lot. I don't know if you see guys get hurt necessarily, but it's a dangerous play. I get it. Anyway, we talked about this briefly. This doesn't really impact the play on the field. I'm a proponent of this getting done. A later trade deadline, right? I told you about this. I think the Browns were the team that brought this up. Their general manager had, Andrew Berry had said this, and I think I read you this quote, but I'm going to read it to you again. When you look at the other major four sports leagues, I think baseball and basketball, their trade deadline is up about after 65% of their games have been played. Hockey is after 78%. We are currently at 45%. Our proposal would move it to about 55% of games played while also maintaining the integrity of the season. So per this change, it would move the trade deadline to after week 9, which is, I think the deadline is right now after like week 8, because Washington played the Philadelphia Eagles in week 8, and after they lost that game, they traded away Montez Sweat and Chase Young, both. So the trade deadline was imminent after that week 8 contest. Moving in, I think essentially what they're doing is trying to adjust for that extra game that has been added to the schedule. So now instead of 17 weeks, you have 18 weeks of NFL football now and 17 games. And they never adjusted the trade deadline to match that. So they're just trying to move it back. It makes sense. But so the pushback to this, is that you'll get more teams tanking. And the example that has been provided was that of Washington last season. So waiting till later in the season to determine whether a team is a buyer or seller could create teams being encouraged to trade away key players and become less competitive as the months turn colder. This was written by, I forgot who said that quote. Then they say, we see this phenomenon already to a degree with the current deadline as is. The Washington Commanders, for example, traded away pass rushers Montez Sweat and Chase Young at the 2023 deadline. Both players were on expiring contracts, and it was easy for Washington to sell the idea that it simply wanted to maximize assets and gain draft capital. However, the moves did significantly weaken the Commanders' roster, which went winless after week 9 and earned the number 2 pick in the draft. So they're trying to say that Washington essentially tanked, which, again, I've always said it's damn near impossible to get 53 dudes who are fighting for their NFL careers, especially those guys on the back end who are getting the opportunity because you traded away those players, to not go out and play hard and try to win. Now, again, if you suck, you suck, which we sucked. And trading those two away, we couldn't get to the quarterback. But we weren't going to win very many games with those guys. Trust me. Trading them away made it even more likely that we wouldn't win. And we still almost won 2 games. Seahawks game, 3 if you count the Giants' second game, and the Jets game. We still almost won 2 games. But I get it. I still think they need to do it. Other rule proposals. A proposal by the Detroit Lions to protect the club's ability to challenge a third ruling following one successful challenge. That's been passed already. So if you get one of your first 2 challenges correct, you then are extended a third challenge. So remember, it used to be you had to get your first 2 correct in order to challenge a third time. Now, if you just get one of the first 2, and I think that's probably the right call, because what you effectively do is you limit teams' willingness to throw the challenge flag for fearing that if I throw it here and I'm wrong, And I've seen plays at the beginning of games that were very impactful. I think about the Cowboys-Eagles first game this past year, where clearly the Eagles got a great spot and brought up a fourth and 1 that they went for, got, and ultimately did the brotherly shove, got the first down and went down and scored a touchdown. That possession doesn't end that way. If McCarthy throws the challenge flag, which he should have anyway, but maybe he's a little hesitant because if I throw it, I don't win. Now I only got one challenge left and I can't get a third. Because they would have been 3 yards short of the first down had he thrown the challenge flag. He didn't. The spot ended up being 1 yard short. They go for it. They get it. The rest is history. In a game that they ultimately lost by like 6 points or whatever it was. So I saw the 49ers not challenge that catch by the Eagles in the playoffs in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago, or not this year, but the year prior, where Devontae Smith caught that foot. He didn't catch that ball. Anybody at home, but Kyle Shanahan wasn't sure, and he didn't want to use an early challenge because fearing that if I challenge and I don't win, now I only have one left, I still would have challenged. Too big of a play. I would have challenged it. Either way, I think it's the right move to give a team an additional challenge. Should you miss on the first one, but you get the second one, you get a third one, right? I think that's the way it should go. A proposal by the Philadelphia Eagles to eliminate the first touch spot after the receiving team possesses the ball. I'm assuming they're talking about on punts. So when you punt the ball and a team touches it first, the team that's punting the ball, they touch it, but they don't down it. And you can pick the ball up. You can do whatever you want without any penalty, right? You can fumble it. It's your ball again. You could, try and pick it up, kick it around, and it's still your ball, right? I think they're trying to eliminate that. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but I've always thought that was a weird rule, but I get it too at the same time. And once a team touches it, because they could try to bat it, backwards to, anything. You don't want to penalize the team that is receiving the ball because the other team touched it already. If you can still do something with it, then you should be able to. I don't like this proposal from the Eagles to permit a team to maintain possession of the ball after a score by substituting one offensive play, 4th and 20 from the kicking team's 20-yard line for an onside kick attempt. If you have a prolific offense, and I get 4th and 20 is tough to pick up, but it's less about the great offensive teams. It's more about teams with garbage defense. As a fan of a team that has had garbage defense over the years, where it didn't matter how long of a third down you had, it could have been 3rd and 24, you were going to get 25. I don't want to see a play like this enacted, where you can substitute a play that rarely works in terms of an onside kick. And I get it. If you're behind and you need an onside kick, you should have very low odds of getting the ball back. You put yourself in a position to be trailing. Now you need a miracle play. 4th and 20. I've seen a lot of teams convert 4th and 20. We see a lot of bad defense on 4th and long situations that allow teams to convert. I don't like the idea of a team being able to repossess the football after converting a 4th and 20, essentially. I don't, there's to me not enough, because if I'm in a position to kick an onside kick, I'm already behind the 8 ball. There's no real risk involved for that team. And conversely, if I'm playing a bad defensive team and I fall behind, it gives me an opportunity to come back quickly, because while you might suck on defense, my special teams can recover an onside kick. Versus a 4th and 20, I might have Swiss cheese defense and I might be up 3 scores with 5 minutes left in this game, but I just gave up a touchdown. Now it's a 2-score game, and you go for it on 4th and 20, you get it, and you go score another touchdown, you go for it on 4th and 20 again, and you go get it, and you still got 2 timeouts and a 2-minute warning, my defense stinks. I could give up this lead very quickly, right? I just don't like that. I don't think that's something that they should pass, and I don't think it will pass. Hopefully it does not. Indianapolis Colts proposed to permit a coach or replay official inside of 2 minutes to challenge any foul that has been called. I just think that's going to slow the game down a little bit too much. Every foul that's called inside of 2 minutes could be challenged by the booth or a coach. Every coach is going to try to challenge stuff inside of the 2 minutes. I just think you need to leave that to the officials. Sometimes they're a little slow buzzing down to stop play, but for the most part, I feel like they get most of the stuff right that they're supposed to buzz down and stop within 2 minutes. I think if you start allowing coaches to factor into that, you're going to get a lot of challenges. I don't think that's a good idea. A proposal by the competition committee to allow for an enforcement of a major foul by the offense prior to the change of possession in a situation where there are fouls by both teams. So you allow enforcement of a major foul by the offense prior to a change of possession where there are fouls on both teams. I don't really get that one. I guess they're saying if there's 2 fouls and instead of you maybe tacking that on the extra point, or usually it's the kickoff. Nah, let's tack that on right now, right? Let's make them kick this field goal, this extra point from 15 yards further back instead of here. Let's not push this off to the kickoff. Maybe that's what they're saying. I'm not quite sure about that one. A proposal by the competition committee to include the ruling of a passer down by contact, out of bounds, or before throwing a pass as a reviewable play. So I do know that there's also been another rule change with let me see if I can find it. This will be the last one we talk about because I think this one already passed as well. See if I can find it. Let's see. So we talked about that one. We talked about that one. I'm not seeing it right now. But there was one more where I'm going to find it. It's in here somewhere. Where here it is. NFL rule change to correct roughing the passer grounding penalties. So the competition committee will afford the replay assistant more latitude to overturn certain roughing the passer and intentional grounding penalties. This one could get a little grayish, right? There could be some gray area here because you're allowing them to determine. Now, I think for intentional grounding, this is going to work really well. But if we're talking about roughing the passer, that could get a little dicey, but I'd much rather have somebody look at that because there have been too many times where we said, that's not roughing the passer, bro. But then at the same time, there's been times where your player hit the quarterback in the head and they could have called it. Are they going to call those instead? Like, I always say that those things usually, kind of average themselves out because I can't tell you how many times quarterbacks get hit in the head and it'd be like, yo, that's a bullshit ass call. They call it, but it's a lot of times where they get hit in the head and they don't call the shit and they didn't see it. So I'm for it though. Anything that can stop the offense from gaining an advantage on some BS calls, I'm all for it. So we'll see how that one goes too. But anyway, man, NFL every year claims to be wanting to make their product better, but it's hard to feel like they're improving the game with some of the changes that they're trying to make. I don't love it, but what are you gonna do, right? What are we gonna do? Nothing. So anyway, excuse me, I digress. Let's go ahead and let's make some social media maneuvers, man. I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know what it is. Late night Louie. Y'all get at the kid. Y'all know how to do it. If you're out there, you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent, we'll get to as many of those as possible. But the best and most efficient way to ensure that your comment is read is to super chat. So if you want to jump to the front of the line and you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chatting is the way to do so. So I got a super chat here from Rum to start us off. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Rum writes, AP says they don't view tackle as a whole, mentioning Cornelius Lucas and Scott, who he thinks he's fooling. Good news is he didn't mention Wiley. Confirms move to left guard. I'm not confirming anything. I just hope, and I've said this already, they're logical folks in that building now. The things that they do make sense. And if they are the shrewd, of talent evaluators and these guys that get it like we think they are, then there's no way that they watched Andrew Wiley like we watched him last year and come away from that thinking we can get by with Andrew Wiley for another season. If you're going to do that, you might as well have kept Charles Leno Jr. You might as well have kept Charles Leno Jr. and then replaced Andrew Wiley with a young tackle. But you can't get rid of both of them or get rid of Charles Leno Jr. and say, no, but Andrew Wiley's fine. There's no way. They got to be smarter than that. I'm just assuming that re-signing Cornelius Lucas, still having Trenton Scott, and I told you already, I did a video pretty much telling you that the Cornelius Lucas signing coupled with Trenton Scott, who I did not know until a week ago was still on the roster, because I assumed, and this is what I get for assuming, that he had signed a one-year deal last year. Well, he signed a 2-year deal, so he was still on the contract. The Cornelius Lucas signing coupled with Trenton Scott still being here says, hey, I'm comfortable with them just getting one tackle in the draft, which is why I said I would be okay with them not drafting a second tackle, right? But again, who does he think he's fooling? They're drafting a tackle, right? Like there's a hole. He may not want to admit it, and he shouldn't. His job is not to tell everybody else what the needs are for the Washington Commanders. That's not his job. His job is not to declare to the other 31 teams, hey, we need a tackle. That's not his job. His job is to keep it as close to the vest as possible, right, in terms of what the intentions of the Washington Commanders are in every single round of the draft where they hold a pick. They're looking for a tackle. It's no secret, at least not to the fan base. We know what they're doing. I talked about the players that they've had in for their official 30 visits. They've only had 3 to this point, but 2 of them were tackles that we project to be somewhere in that, early to mid portion of the second round. I think those guys are closer to the middle back portion of the second round, if you ask me. But whatever, that's the area that they're sniffing around right now. So they need tackle help. Who are we kidding, right? I'll say this. Him not mentioning Andrew Wiley is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. He didn't forget Andrew Wiley. He just didn't name him because he's not a viable option at tackle. So I can appreciate that. But I'd rather be safe than sorry. Let's just make sure that he's not in there first. But I did get to thinking, like, what if? A lot of people are trying to play with my mind. I'm not allowing it to happen, right? A lot of people are trying to get me to second guess myself. What if Andrew Wiley is like, there's no way, dude. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way. And that's just how I'm going with it. There's just no way. King of the Bluegrass, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. King of the Bluegrass writes, this is the best 1 through 100 prospect draft I've seen in at least 15 years. So yes, get as many picks as you can if you can. That sounds good in theory, but again, I go back to the quality versus quantity narrative. And while you may be able to get some really good players, let's say you're Arizona, and I'm assuming that's what prompted you to super chat that. And I said, do you really want 3 picks in the first round this year if you're Arizona? And your answer is clearly yes. You think this is one of the most talented drafts that, in terms of 1 to 100 that you can remember, which if that's in fact true, that's a good thing for Washington, who has 6 picks in the top 100. But if you're Arizona and you have a chance to get a guy that could be the best at his position in 3 years from now, versus getting a bunch of guys that could be, let's say, top 30 at their position, but not top 15. So somewhere between 15 and 30 at their position, which isn't bad. It's really good, depending on what position that is, right? But if you got a guy that could be the best at his position in 3 years, would you rather have that guy or 2 players that are 27th best at their position? That's the question you got to ask yourself. It's cool to have the 27th best, defensive tackle in the NFL, but is it really? When you could have the first or second best receiver in the NFL? It could be really good to have the, 21st best tackle if you're putting both left and right together. That's cool. I mean, I can respect the 21st best tackle in the NFL. But I'd rather have the first or second best receiver in the NFL. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So, again, it'd be a little bit different if Arizona didn't already have a second first-round pick. I don't need your extra first. I don't need it. I want it. That's cool if that's the direction they decide. But Arizona already has an additional first. Your little extra first-round pick in the 20s at 23, that ain't moving me. You're asking me to move out of the top 10 to 11, where I may not end up with one of these stud receivers. Yes, it's a deep receiver class, but is Adonai Mitchell the same as Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr., or Malik Neighbors? No, he's not. Adonai Mitchell might turn out to be really good, but he's not those 3 guys that I just mentioned. Is Brian Thomas Jr. one of those? No, he's not. He might end up being really good, but he's not Rome Odunze. He's not his teammate Malik Neighbors, and he's not Marvin Harrison Jr. That's what you have to weigh if you're Arizona, if you're the Chargers. You could end up with one of those other guys, and they may end up being really good. Or you could have one of the best, potentially. That's a hard... If I'm the Chargers and I don't have an additional first-round pick, that might be more appealing to me, trading back and picking up an additional first-round pick that I don't currently have. Arizona already has 2 first-round picks. I haven't seen a team with 3 first-round picks. Generally, I haven't seen that work out favorable, where all 3 of those first-rounders hit. 2 of them hit. Detroit just had 3 first-rounders, I believe. 2 drafts ago, Jamison Williams they took, I think. Is that the same draft? I could be tripping, but I think I'm tripping. They had 2 first-rounders that year where they took Jack Campbell and then they took the running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think they had 3 first-rounders that year. The Raiders had 3 first-rounders. I don't know if any of them joints hit, right? I think they whiffed on all 3 of them. It's tough getting 3 dudes that all end up being good. I'd rather just get the one guy that I know is going to be good, barring some kind of, catastrophe with injuries and things of that nature. I'd rather just get that guy instead. But, to each its own. We'll see. The Blackout B. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Blackout B, writes, what it do, Lou? What's going on, Blackout B? He says, show and music recommendations for you. Rancher on Prime is pretty good if you haven't seen it. And check out this guy named Pale J. Okay. As a matter of fact, I will write those down just to make sure that I don't forget, because I've been known to forget some things. So Pale J. I'm assuming he's white. Maybe that's a bad assumption to make. And Rancher. All right. Rancher sounds whack. I'm going to tell you that right now. But that doesn't mean it's whack. But it sounds trash, by the way. But we'll see what happens. I would look at it and see if it's something that interests us. All right. Christopher McLaughlin. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, as always, hope you and yours are doing wonderful. 3 questions. 1, what are your thoughts on the new proposed kickoff rule? Talked about that already, so we already kind of nipped that one in, but I don't want it. I don't want the new rules. When it was first pitched to me, I thought, oh, okay. I could see why they would want to do this. I didn't know all of the little nuances and all the extra things, like the little zone there from the, goal line to the 20 and all of the little subtleties there. It's too much. No, I'm good. Yeah, call me old man, get off my lawn. Call me whatever you want. Call me a boomer, whatever. That is just too much. What are we doing? It's too much. Number 2, how much longer do you think Deshaun Watson is the starter for the Browns? They really don't have a choice unless they want to go full Russell Wilson, and that would go straight to the top of the list as the biggest bust in NFL history and the worst trade in NFL history. And I don't know if you can ever top it if he doesn't work out in Cleveland. He was not great last year, but he won. So there's that. And you can't, it's too early to admit you made a mistake, because he's about to start making real money. I think Watson over the next 2 or 3 years is like a $63 million cap hit or something like that. There's nothing you can do. So you're going to have to make this shit work. Figure it out. You're going to have to figure it out. And that's why they keep trying to add weapons. If I'm not mistaken, the Browns traded for Jerry Jeudy, right? Because they gotta make it work. He can't stink. It'll cripple him. And there's no coming back from that mistake. You gave up a lot to get him, a lot of draft picks, first of all, to get him. Then you paid him the richest contract in NFL history, essentially, that was fully guaranteed. He's got to work. So they're going to give him every opportunity in Cleveland to get his shit together. And again, the good thing about last year, even though he didn't stay healthy and it wasn't pretty, they won. I think he went like 4-1 in his starts. So it's not like they were losing games. It wasn't pretty, and it didn't look like $230 million worth of, quality starts. But as long as you're winning, you'll take it, and you just hope he gets better as time continues to pass. Adding more talent will definitely help, but he's going to have to play better. It sucked that Nick Chubb got hurt, but they still were running the ball. No excuses. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Chris. Oh, wait. Sorry. There was one more. 3, who leads the Commanders in rush and receiving touchdowns this year? Rush touchdowns. It's hard to say right now. because I don't know who the quarterback is. If it's Jaden Daniels, it could easily be Jaden Daniels. Cliff Kingsbury has been known to give the running back the football in the red zone. So my guess is going to be Brian Robinson. So I'll just leave it as an easy Brian Robinson answer, but that could be subject to change. Now, receiving touchdowns, that one is hard because Terry has never been a receiving touchdown guy in his career. I don't think he's had a season with more than 7. And I think that came, if I'm not mistaken, either in his rookie season or his second season in the league. So he's not a big touchdown guy. He's never been a big touchdown guy. Some of that could probably be attributed to the quarterbacks that he's played with. But whatever the case may be, he just hasn't been a big touchdown guy. Jahan had a massive touchdown year his rookie season, and then the last season was really disappointing because, again, the quarterback situation and the coordinator situation in particular weren't ideal, and the offensive line wasn't great. But again, that's nor here nor there. There are no other guys that you can look at and say, okay, other than Zach Ertz, we really don't have any big receiving touchdown dynamos. So my guess would be Jahan Dotson, because he's done it before. I know he can do it again. I'm confident in his ability to play. And you're going to draft a receiver, but I can't imagine that receiver coming in and getting more opportunities to catch the football than Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin. So could that guy be a red zone target? Could he be a bigger guy that they throw the football to? Sure. But I still think Jahan ends up being that guy. And I don't think it's going to be like 12. It'll be like 7 or 8. And that'll probably lead the team. But we'll see, right? Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, Chris. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, hey, Lou, how close do you think the Packers are to passing the Lions for the top of the NFC North with the growth of Jordan Love and acquiring Josh Jacobs? Was I tripping, or was that really Josh Jacobs on that bike and he flipped over? I saw something. I couldn't make out, was that him or not on that bike for real? I get it that you still want to live your life, but when you sign a contract for $48 million, you can't be out here in these streets doing stupid shit, man. Like you 17 years old, bro. If that's him, I don't know if that's him or not, but whatever the case may be. What the Packers did in the playoffs last year was pretty impressive. What we got to see from them is consistency. Can they do that again over the life of a 17-game regular season? Can those young receivers who stepped up in the postseason, can they do it? Are they really legit now? Have they gained that confidence? Have they gained that rapport with Jordan Love? Have they gained the trust of the play caller, their head coach, Matt LaFleur? And thus, all of those parts now are in position to take that next step together. And then you add in Josh Jacobs, who's probably a little bit more dynamic at this point than Aaron Jones is, and give you, and they brought back A.J. Dillon, so you've got that 1-2 punch still. Yeah, they're going to be interesting, are the Green Bay Packers, because they've always been the class. They going all the way back to the Brett Favre days, they've been the class of the NFC North. And then Rodgers came in and they pretty much didn't miss a beat. And the only time they would not win the division is if Rodgers had gotten injured at some point during the season. If he was healthy, then you just expected the Packers to win that division. They could be right back there again. Now, the Lions aren't going to make it easy. They're not going away as proof of what they did last year. Now, that's 1 year, but it was on the heels of them finishing the year prior strong. And it had a lot, the thing that was so impressive about the Lions last year is everybody knew they were coming. Everybody saw them from a distance, and they saw them kind of coming up from the rear very rapidly. And everybody said, damn, the Lions, they're on the way. And nobody stopped them. And that shit was impressive to me, because it's easy when you can sneak up on somebody, they don't know you coming, Like the Giants snuck up on teams 2 years ago when they made the playoffs. Daniel Jones won a playoff game. They snuck up on teams. Nobody was expecting the Giants to be good that year. The Texans snuck up on teams last year. Hey, whoa, wait a minute. This rookie quarterback, this opportunistic defense, what's going on right now? You ain't sneaking up on nobody this year. The Giants couldn't sneak up on anybody last year, right? It's different when I know you're coming. I'm preparing for you, and you still bop me over the head. That's what made what the Lions did last year impressive. And I'm not sure if Green Bay just caught fire and gained confidence at the end of the season and caught some teams like Dallas off guard, almost caught the 49ers off guard. Because you're just thinking, it's the Packers. Like, we've seen them this season. They're not that good. And went into Dallas, stomped a mud hole in their ass, and really should have beaten the 49ers as well and made it to the AFC Championship game. You say same thing for the Lions. Should have beaten the 49ers and made it to the Super Bowl. So it'll be interesting to see those teams battle it out. Chicago is not to be slept on. I don't think they're ready to compete with those two teams, but they're not going to make it easy. And they were already making it tough on both the Packers and the Lions last season with Justin Fields. Okay. Imagine what that looks like with the upgrades to the roster. Adding a DeAndre Swift, adding a Keenan Allen, adding a better quarterback in Caleb Williams. Imagine what that does to that football team. Speaking of something, this is a different topic, maybe for a different day, but shit, we're here now. Let's talk about it. Did you see the comments from Jalen Johnson, the star cornerback of the Chicago Bears? Just signed the deal he signed in free agency to stay in Chicago after being slapped with the franchise tag. They reached a long-term agreement. He got his money. And now he's viewed as one of the leaders in that locker room. And I forget who he was with. I want to say it was Joy Adams, is my guess. Kay Adams, excuse me. Not Joy. Who the hell is Joy Adams? Kay Adams. And she probably asked him some sort of question. I only saw his quote transcribed, so I don't know how it came about, what the context was. But, and I'm paraphrasing here. Jalen Johnson said something to the effect of, "Hey, that Hollywood shit ain't gonna work in this locker room. He gonna have to prove it first." Okay. I got a quick story to tell. Because what that reminds me of, and I think just about everybody out there is probably at some point or another in their life encountered this, whether you're on the wrong side of this or you were the one with the assumption. But I got a quick story to tell from my personal experience. So in my past life, when I was a merchandiser, you encounter a lot of people, obviously, in that job. And I worked at primarily Lowe's and Home Depots and things of that nature, Walmarts from time to time. But you'd be in these Lowe's and you'd run into employees and they come and go. It's Lowe's, you know. Some people stay there forever. Others are just using it as a stepping stone to get to their next job. And so it is what it is. But sometimes you get to a new store or, you know, new employees come in and you see a guy once or twice and you see his interactions with other people and you see him, you know, and you think, that guy's a dick. So it was this one dude in particular that, you know, I'd been working that store for a couple years and I'd seen him many a times while in that store. We've never talked. He always had a scowl on his face, always looked like something stunk, like he was mad at the world. When he was helping somebody, it always seemed aggressive. I don't know what that conversation is like. I don't know if he has a relationship with that person or not. So for me to judge on the outside looking in, that could be how those two conversate. That can be how their relationship works, right? And it works for them. But me seeing it from afar, it looks aggressive. He looks standoffish. His face is always made up. I just said, hey, that dude's an asshole. I don't like him. I don't even know him, right? But I just know from what I've seen, from what I've, you know, heard, potentially, yeah, not the kind of guy I want to converse with, right? So one day, I needed help with something, and a customer needed help. I couldn't help him. He was the nearest associate. So I walked the customer over there to him, and he helped the customer out. Afterwards, we talked briefly. That brief talk turned into a 25-minute conversation. Turns out we had a lot of things in common. Really cool dude. Every time I would come to the store, we would chop it up, etc., etc. Long story short, we became really good working companions and friends, right? And acquaintances. And we even decided to try to hang out outside of work a couple of times. So you can easily make up a narrative in your head about somebody you've never met or you've never talked with before. You see all of this stuff about Caleb Williams and, you know, this celebrity status that he has. And there's a lot that comes with him. He's posing in magazines with dresses on. He paints his nails. There's a lot that comes with Caleb Williams. I haven't heard one teammate say anything bad about this dude. Not a single one. I can't speak for anybody else. I haven't heard a single teammate call him out, say that he was selfish, he's a me guy, none of that. Not an offensive lineman who he took every single one of them to the Heisman Trophy ceremony with him. Not, you know, one of his receivers. We saw a light moment he had with Brendan Rice at the combine where he was asking him questions. I haven't seen anybody say anything but good things about this guy. Cliff Kingsbury spoke highly of him. Every coach that I've heard talk about, nobody says he's selfish, he's a me guy, any of that stuff. So obviously, Jalen Johnson is responding to the things he's seen, but he's never had a conversation with this kid. And he may have one conversation with him and realize very quickly, oh, he's actually a damn good dude and we can win a lot of football games with him. But you got to be careful with some of the stuff you put out there. And I get it. What I said all of that to say this. I think that there's still a lot of guys in that locker room who were team Justin Fields. And if this thing doesn't go well early, and if he doesn't come in there and just become one of the guys quickly and win that locker room over, and if he doesn't play well, that's the most important part. Play well, right? Because other guys will get on board if you start winning games. Because I'm pretty sure Robert Griffin III wasn't the most likable guy, but they were winning that first season when they started out 3-6 and then won 7 in a row. You're going to put some of the things you may have seen that you didn't necessarily love. You can put them things aside if you're winning football games. If he comes in there, he rubs a couple guys the wrong way, a couple of the veterans the wrong way, and they don't win games, it could get ugly fast because Justin Fields made an impact, an impression on that locker room. And those guys loved him. And he worked hard. And he was one of the guys. And he was selfless and self-deprecating. And there was a lot of good qualities to Justin Fields. He was a leader on the field. He was a leader off the field. He was accountable. There's a lot of things to like about Justin Fields. And if in any way, shape, or form, Caleb Williams is the opposite of that, look out. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. I said all of that. That has nothing to do with nothing, right? Because we were talking about the Packers and the Lions, but you guys know I'm good for at least one or two tangents. I tie it all in because don't sleep on the Bears. I still think the Lions are the team to beat. When you make it to the NFC Championship game and you were up 24-7 in that ball game and dominated and should have went to the Super Bowl, you get the benefit of the doubt from me. So until somebody knocks them off of that throne, it's the Lions division. Have the Packers maybe close that gap a bit? And yeah, with the way they finished the season off and some of the offseason moves that they've made, the acquisitions, sure, they've closed that gap a little bit, I would think. But they got to go out and prove it now. So do the Lions. But I'm more impressed with what the Lions did than what the Packers did. The Packers kind of snuck up on teams at the end of the season, had a doable schedule. They made use of the Lions. they were the hunted last year. Teams were going after them because everybody saw the Lions coming. And they went into Kansas City week 1 on banner night and punched the Chiefs in the mouth. Like the Lions, they were that team last year. They got that swag, and they brought everybody back, essentially. So I still think they're the team to beat in that division. Black Al B, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Black Al B writes, autocorrect, Reacher, not Rancher, LOL. Okay. Yeah, no, we've watched both seasons of Reacher. I want to say my guy, Frank McLaughlin, shout out to Frankie, baby, if you're out there, was the one that suggested Reacher, and he didn't miss. Yeah, we watched Reacher on Amazon. It was good. That's right up our alley right there. A good old-fashioned bang, shoot 'em up, right, with a badass. You can't lose with a badass, right, where a guy who just seems invincible. It just, and I think my guy Derek B said this, and he is so spot on. It just makes me think back to the actual movie with Tom Cruise, and I go, could they have miscast that character any more than they did with Tom Cruise? Like, he's the exact opposite of Jack Reacher. They probably had to use some camera angles to make him look taller and tougher. Tom Cruise is like 5'8", man. 100 and probably 60 pounds. Like, what were they thinking? Now, from a demeanor standpoint, he nailed it, but nobody's afraid of Tom Cruise, man. That's how Reacher was probably supposed to be cast in the movie. The show was better than the movie. I enjoyed both seasons, and I hope that there's a third. Mike Leslie, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Mike Leslie writes, RB's about to go off this year with the hip tackle ban. Also, how would you feel if y'all take a non-quarterback with your first pick? I would feel betrayed. I would feel lost as a fan because it wouldn't make any sense. You got one or two options. Either you're taking a quarterback or you're trading back. The trade back option doesn't appeal to me because where are you going to trade back to? I mean, the only way I would feel comfortable trading back is with New England at 3. And I gave you a scenario earlier in which New England only wants Jaden Daniels. And if they can't get Daniels, they want out of 3, right? And again, this isn't something I heard from somewhere. I'm making this up. This is a hypothetical. But the reason why I think New England might be kind of throwing out innuendos of, hey, we don't necessarily love these quarterbacks is because there may be one in particular that they have their sights on. But when you're sitting there at 3 with 2 teams who are quarterback needy ahead of you, you're not in control of anything, which is what I kept saying to those who wanted Washington to get Caleb Williams. You're not in control of anything when the team in front of you holds all the cards. Same thing can be said for New England at 3. They're not in control of anything. They're at the mercy of Chicago and Washington. They know what Chicago is going to do. So essentially, they're at the mercy of Washington. If they truly love Jaden Daniels and Washington gets to a point where they say, hey, we love Jaden Daniels and Drake May or J.J. McCarthy all the same. And New England's like, well, that's not the case for us. And Washington says, either you give us something to move back to 3, and you can take Jaden Daniels, we're going to take him if you don't give us something. You could threaten him and then see but you would have to have intel that suggests that that's who the Patriots want. You'd have to know, hey, I know you want Jaden Daniels, and we'll let you have him, but you got to move up here to get him. Because we cool with taking Drake May or J.J. McCarthy. Like, I hope that's not the case, by the way. But if they were cool with taking Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and the Patriots are like, nah, we just want Jaden Daniels. Okay, we can make something happen. That's the only way I can see Washington trading back. But as far as trading back and not getting one of those quarterbacks, nah. You take anything other than quarterback, then what was last season for? What did you lose all them games for? What was all that headache, strife, and misery for if you're not going to come out of this thing with a quarterback that you can call your own and try to build around. To me, when you lose the way that we lost, we were the second worst team in football last year. And you could argue we were the worst team if not for the Panthers. And the Panthers were the worst team. They earned the moniker worst team in football last year. If not for the Panthers, we would have been the clear-cut worst team in football. And if you're that bad, you better walk away with something. As a wise man once said, I'm leaving here with something. Well, that something can't be an offensive tackle or a receiver, not when you need the most important position. We leaving here with something after going 3-14, 4-13, whatever the number was last year. I better be leaving with a franchise quarterback. I'd be pretty distraught if we came away with something other than quarterback. It's not happening, though. NGA. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Who writes, did you listen to AP's conversation with reporters? I didn't. I kept waiting for it to show up somewhere on the team website, on the YouTube channel. It just didn't. Maybe it showed up after I quit looking for it. Because, you know, as soon as that's available, I'm going to react to it. I saw the reporters there. They said that Dan Quinn and all the coaches on the NFC side are going to be made available to tomorrow at breakfast, where the AFC coaches were made available today. So I'm expecting to hear from Dan Quinn tomorrow. But as far as Adam Peters, apparently there was a scrum. We saw bits and pieces from the beat reporters who are here locally. And I was waiting for, you know, a full 7-8 minute video or whatever, and it never surfaced. Now, maybe it's available now, but I haven't seen it yet. And I didn't want to react to the little bits and pieces that I saw because I want the whole thing. And I know at some point it's going to surface somewhere. I just have to be patient. So if you're telling me it's out now, I'm going to watch it and I'm going to do a video, and I'll probably put it out tomorrow. But if I haven't seen it yet, no, I haven't. But I'm waiting, and if it's there, I'm going to find it, I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to react to it. So just know that. Let's see. Because I figured it would come at some point. I just couldn't find it. I was like, okay, let me refresh my page. Maybe I need to refresh my page. And it just never showed up. So I was like, okay, I'll just wait. It's going to show up eventually. So we'll see what happens. RHS Chess. Thank you for the comment, who writes, are we just submissive to whatever this team does? This always happens. Haskins, Ron's plan, Wentz. Why not us with TH4? EB, NHO, Forbes, hiring DQ. We hype up everything, not gonna lie. So you named a lot there, and a lot has transpired in the last 4 years. There's been a lot, and 5 if you add in Haskins in 2019 and his rookie season. But here's the thing. When you have nothing, I've talked about this before. When you have nothing, you latch on to anything, right? You're clamoring for something that you can call your own. It's why some fans were bent out of shape about Cam Curl. We don't have shit. So when you don't have nothing, you hold on to everything tight. I made the analogy to your mom buys you 1 pair of new kicks to start the school year off. You may get another pair for Christmas, but that's it, you know. And in order to get that next pair at Christmas, you got to sacrifice any games, any new gear if you want those pair of shoes, right? So you got a decision to make. But in knowing that there's no other pair of shoes coming, you got to keep those 1 pair of shoes that you have. You got to keep them shits clean. You can't just go out and roughhouse those, put serious creases in them, and bust them shits up and use them like play kicks. Nah, you got to do the whole, you know, my feet hurt walk where you ball up your toes so you don't get the creases. We've all done it, right? Soon as you get home, you got to take them shits off, right? You see the slightest scuff or little mark, you got to clean that shit off, right? Put them back in the box, put the stuffing back inside the shoe, right? Like, you got to take care of them because you don't know when the next pair is coming. As a fan base, we cherished every little thing we got because we didn't know when the next little, tidbit was coming our way. So yeah, we made a big deal out of Haskins. Some more than others. I never wanted him, and most fans of this team never wanted Haskins. He's here. What are you going to do? It's the same thing that I said about the civil war that's going on between Jaden Daniels and Drake May. And you know what would be crazy, what would be ironic, and I'm not speaking this into existence, but if the other guy somehow weaseled his way in and ended up being a pick, all of this fighting over those two and neither one of them end up being a pick, that would be ironic. It would be crazy. But let's hope that that's not the case. I don't think it's going to be the case either. But the thing that frustrates me is in this civil war, there's going to be casualties. But the biggest casualty is going to be the quarterback that's selected. Because for months, the other side has poked and prodded that player and talked about all the things that this guy can't do, right? Why he shouldn't be the pick. And they've built up in their mind that this guy's the enemy. And if they pick him, we're going to suck. And so if they do pick that player, because one of these guys is going to be selected, you have to think, guess what's going to happen? Half of the fan base or a majority of the fan base is going to not like this quarterback just off the strength of that's not the guy they wanted. And they made him out to be the villain in their head. And that's the part that frustrates me with the fans is once that guy's a part of the family, you may not like the decision and you might have poked and prodded during the process, but once they make their decision, look, I don't want JJ McCarthy. But if they choose him, I'm going to rant, I'm going to rave, I'm going to be pissed, but guess what? He's now a part of the family, and I got to root like hell for him to succeed. There's too many people that have egos and they have agendas and they want to be right so bad that they rather the team suck so that they can say, see, I told you so, instead of saying, hey, let's rally around this guy. We didn't want him. That's what we did with Haskins. That's what I did, at least. I wanted nothing to do with Dwayne Haskins. I could see bust a mile away. May he rest in peace, but he was not a good quarterback here, and he didn't get it from a leadership standpoint. He wasn't willing to put in the work. He wasn't doing the things that he needed to do off the field. And he wasn't good here in Washington. But in 2019, at the end of his rookie season, he showed flashes. And we wanted to believe in 2020. Very good, especially for the system that they brought in here with Scott Turner. That wasn't a good fit for his skill set. And it didn't work. And he didn't play well. And we can go down the list of things that you named, but I won't. I'll save you the trouble, and I'll just tell you. This new regime is off to a great start. You may not like Dan Quinn as the head coach. Some may think we still settled. We'll see. Ultimately, this offseason has gone about as well as one could have hoped. And a huge part of the reason why is Dan Quinn's presence here, whether you like it or not. Whomever they select at quarterback, what are you going to do about it? Is the question. What are you going to do? Are you going to revolt? This team's going to suck. I'm not watching it again. Go ahead. Knock yourself out. But there's not a lot of recourse. Either you can get on board or you can sit over there with your arms folded and your lips poked out and throwing a little temper tantrum like you're 6. What you going to do? I'm a support. I might be mad on draft night when it first happens, and I might be pissed off that this is what we waited all this time for, and all the ass whoopers we took last year was to get JJ McCarthy. And you know what? Just like Dan Quinn, he might turn out to be the best thing for us. I don't want him though, but he might turn out to be the best thing if that's the direction they went in. I wouldn't be happy about it. But no, we're not just accepting everything. Especially this time around. It's different because it's actually a new regime without Daniel Snyder hovering over this organization and keeping us stagnated with his bullshit. If you want to bring up old stuff, go right ahead. They haven't won anything here yet, so you can't say that it's totally different. I get it. But I'm only going to allow but so much of that kind of conversation to enter my brain, because this group shouldn't have to pay for the transgressions of the last 6 groups. They got nothing to do with what Daniel Snyder and Robert Griffin III did back in 2013. They got nothing to do with that. They got nothing to do with what happened at the end of 2013 with the Shanahans. They got nothing to do with that. They got nothing to do with Jay Gruden and his failures to win here with Kirk Cousins and all the shit that went down with couldn't find a defensive coordinator and we couldn't play any defense. They got nothing to do with that. They got nothing to do with Ron's plan. They got nothing to do with EB last year. That's not their problem. They didn't do any of that. So I'm not going to dump all of that shit onto them. Too many fans love to do that. One of the things fans love to say is, can't be patient. I've been patient for 20 years. Okay. But this group that's here, they got nothing to do with the fact that this team sucked ass for 20 years. They weren't here for that. They didn't have anything to do with that. They're not responsible for 20 years of misery for you as a fan. So you can't dump all of that shit onto them and expect them to be able to take us where we ultimately want to go if you're continuing to dump all of that shit on them. It'd be different if Daniel Snyder was still here. You can't wipe that shit away with him still here because he was the root cause of the problem. So you were well within reason to bring up all of this shit from the last 25 years if Snyder were still here, but he's not. So what I'm going to start charging to their account is all the things that they are on the hook for. And the first thing that they're on the hook for is the hire of Adam Peters. That's the first thing they're on the hook for. And then they hired Dan Quinn. And then he hired Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr. And then from there, he filled out his staff in terms of assistant coaches. That's what they're on the hook for right now. The free agency class that they just turned in, they're on the hook for that. This draft that's about to come up, they're on the hook for that. These are the things, if you want to start building a case against this group, these are the things that you need to bring to the table. I don't want to hear about Ron's plan. I don't want to hear about EB. This group has nothing to do with them. You want to start building a case? You want a paper trail against this group, which to me is crazy that we're even having this conversation, being that they literally just got here a month and a half ago. But if you want to play that game, then you can start listing things from this regime. And it starts with the hire of Adam Peters, which how could you be disappointed in anything he's done to this point? Again, unless you wanted Ben Johnson as the head coach, which Ben Johnson looks like a beta, not an alpha. I've already gone through that discussion, gone down that road. I'm not going down that road again. We've done that already enough times. At the end of the day, if you can say we hype up everything, in the past, maybe that was true. Maybe that was true. I'm not hyping up anything. All I'm telling you is I'm excited about this new regime. I'm excited about the staff that's been created here and built. I'm excited about the front office. I'm excited about free agency. And all of that still amounts to 5 to 7 wins. If that's hyping it up, sign me up. I guess I'm a hype man. Now, the ones that think all of this equates to 11 wins, that's hyping it up. That's dangerous, by the way, but I'm not here to tell that person they're wrong. So we'll see what happens. RHS Chess writes, you mentioned Jaden Daniels has bust written all over him. I didn't mention he has bust written all over him. Don't put that in my mouth. Don't put those words in my mouth. So this is another issue people have. You hear what you want to hear. I don't know if that was a typo on your part. I never said that. I never said that. What made you believe that and specifically changed your mind? He seems like Tyrod Taylor with some upside. I said that Jaden Daniels didn't seem like the kind of quarterback that would have had the season that he had and turned into a Heisman Trophy winner. When I watched Jaden Daniels 2 years ago, that first year at LSU, I wasn't impressed. When I watched him back at Arizona State, I wasn't impressed. He did things this year where it felt like the light bulb finally went off for him. He finally figured it out. And again, I always say, no two players are alike. No two people are alike. And not everybody matures at the same rate. Some guys get it just like that. Other guys need time, need starts, need to see it again and again and again. And then once they got it, they got it. Maybe he figured it out. Or maybe he just had one crazy lightning in the bottle year, but that's not who he is. Only one way to find out. But I never said he was a bust. Those words never came out of my mouth. I didn't love Jaden Daniels prior to this season in college football. I didn't think he was going to be a great pro, but I could say the same thing about Joe Burrow. I felt the same way about Joe Burrow. I said that Jaden Daniels was the 3rd round pick at best going into this season. Joe Burrow, same exact thing. Said the same thing about him. I wasn't moved by Joe Burrow's first year at LSU, coming from Ohio State. And then Joe Burrow turned in one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen in college football history from a quarterback. And it changed my mind. Jaden Daniels just did something similar. It wasn't Joe Burrow. Clearly, it wasn't Joe Burrow. But he did some extraordinary things, and I feel differently. But I never called him a bust. Never said that. All right, I'm going to grab let's see. Grab one of John's, and then I'm going to grab one of Red Wings, and then we'll get out of here and go to our final segment of the show. John writes, also, I am happy we grabbed Sam Howell, but my concern is I don't like seeing him benched and then have to get him traded to another team regardless of his throwing performance. Again, it was a less than ideal situation for him, and it went downhill rather quickly, and he needed to change the scenery. Unfortunately, it didn't work here, and I would have loved to have seen him, had I said this, had we ended up where the Giants are at 6, I think Sam Howell is still here, and he's probably the starting quarterback of this team. I could be wrong about that, but he didn't help himself. He just needed to win a game. Had he won one game down the stretch, and that could have been Seattle, that could have been the Giants, it could have been any of those games, right? They were in games. There were some bad teams too, still like the Jets on the schedule, and he was just horrible. Rams game, he didn't play well. Jets game, he didn't play well. Gave us a half against San Francisco, and we hung in there. He didn't play well in the second half. He needed to change the scenery, and we wish him nothing but the best. We'll see what happens, but I assume that Geno Smith is going to be the starter. They've already said that Sam is going to be backing up Geno Smith. That's the right decision. And then we go from there. We'll see what happens. Geno got hurt last year, and Drew Lock had to play. And if that same scenario pops up this year and Sam comes in and plays well, who knows? It could be a changing of the guard, right? But in the meantime, Geno Smith is the entrenched starter in Seattle. He's earned it, and he's played well. And we'll see what he does. We'll see how that situation kind of plays itself out. Red Wings writes, might as well just outlaw defense at this rate. Seriously, who the heck thinks this was a good idea? Guess they value protecting their players over good product. And, that's the part that sucks about this is they clearly value the players getting hurt. because it does hurt the product if star players get hurt. But you've got the NFLPA. I can't, like, this is the part of this whole thing that I can't just get over, is that the NFLPA issued a statement saying that the NFL Players Association rejects any proposal to ban this type of tackle. They do not want to see players have to adjust to yet another rule that, in theory, is going to be hard to officiate. You know how often it is? It's one thing for a horse collar tackle, right? And even that's tough, because if I can't catch a guy any other way, and my last ditch effort is to grab him by his nameplate, I'm going to grab that shit. Sorry, not sorry. If I've got a chance to stop a guy from getting the first down, and my only way of stopping his momentum is to drop my weight down, I'm not trying to hurt him. I'm trying to stop his momentum. He's bigger than me. He's dragging my ass, and he's going to get this first down. And the only way to stop him is to drop my weight. I'm going to do that. It's ridiculous. But what can you do, right? What can you do? So that's going to take us to garbage time. So one last thing on this Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh thing with Justin Fields. The Steelers have pretty much issued a statement. Mike Tomlin spoke today, as I talked about, with the AFC coaches talking, and he said that Russell Wilson's the quarterback, which we had already been told. He's the quarterback, and Justin Fields is going to be his backup. Now, he said when they get to the preseason, they're going to turn these guys loose, essentially. But Justin is clearly behind Russell Wilson, who will have the first crack at being their starting quarterback. So essentially, it's Russell Wilson's job to lose. He's going to go in the prohibitive favorite to be the starter there. And unless he is just trifling over camp into preseason and Justin Fields is just killing it at every turn, he's going to be their starter week one, is Russell Wilson. Now, Tomlin also went on to say that when it's the right time, Fields will get an opportunity. Here's where things get a little dicey. One, they've got to make a decision on Justin Fields' fifth-year option. The assumption is they're going to pick that up. You almost have to at this point. So that's one. Two, Russell Wilson only signed a one-year deal. Now, there were talks immediately after Russell Wilson signed, and then I think these conversations kind of conjured up even more so after the trade for Justin Fields, that Russell Wilson was going to work on a long-term deal there. I can't see and envision a world where the Steelers want to sign up for any more than 1 year of Russell Wilson at a time right now. That $1.2 million with him still getting all of that money from the Broncos is a perfect situation and scenario for the Steelers. It allows them to pick up the fifth-year option for Justin Fields and feel good about their situation at quarterback, because you're not overspending at the position. And you get to test run and give it a spin. You get to spin the block with Russ to see if he's worthy of bringing back. Because there could be good football left in Russell Wilson. There could still be good football in there. I just refuse to believe that his ass fell off a cliff after he left Seattle. Like he just turned trash. Like that's hard for me to stomach. But it could be the case. He could have literally fell off a cliff. I just don't think that's the case. So what's fascinating with that whole situation is that Justin Fields could just not play in Pittsburgh. That's a realistic possibility. They could have given up, and they gave up nothing for him in terms of draft capital. So that's not really the issue, because if he doesn't play, it's just a 6th-round pick, right? If he plays a certain amount of snaps and a certain percentage, it could turn into a 4th-round pick next year. But right now it's a 6th-round pick, and if he doesn't play, then it's just a 6th-round pick. Who cares? But you're going to pick up the 5th-year option At some point, you want to know, because Russell Wilson isn't the long-term solution in Pittsburgh. At some point, don't you want to know what Justin Fields is and what he can do? And that it's a tough situation to read, because if Russell Wilson goes in there and plays well, and one thing Russell has usually been in his career is durable. He had that one season in Seattle towards the end where he hurt his finger and he missed a couple of starts. And that's when they kind of got a little taste of Geno, and they were like, hey, this Geno shit ain't that bad. And that's what kind of gave them the idea, we can move Russ. Geno can do this. What if Russ plays really well for them, which is, I think the Steelers want that, right? They want a guy that's going to give them a chance to play high-level competitive football. But in doing that, you stunt the growth of Justin Fields, and you may not see him because, again, you got a decision to make. If Russ, let's say Russ plays well this season, Steelers go 11-6, and TJ Watt said, look, I just want to win a playoff game. F what you heard. All this quarterback talk is cool. We ain't won shit. I ain't won a playoff game in my career. I'm trying to win something, bro. Okay, so what if Russ comes in there, you go 11-6, and you win a playoff game? Then what? Of course, you're running it back. Well, now Justin Fields didn't play, so you only have to give up a 6th-round pick. You're also picking up the 5th-year option, so you're paying, let's call it $19 million for a dude who's sitting on the bench, which I don't know what that number is. Probably higher than that. He was still a top 10 pick, if I'm not mistaken, so I would assume that that's probably somewhere close to in the 20s is my guess, that last year of the deal, but whatever, right? He doesn't play in his 2nd year. This is the last year of his deal. There's no, you could use it. You're not going to use the franchise tag on a quarterback that you haven't seen play. So are you just going to let him walk after that? Like, that's why this situation is crazy, because if Russ goes in there, kills it, then the Steelers say, all right, well, we got to bring Russ back. Is Russ going to just settle for another 1 year, $1.2 million deal? Hell no, he ain't settling for that shit. Even though the Broncos would still be paying him a very handsome salary, which would allow him to do that again, he's not going to do that again. At that point, he's probably going to want a multi-year deal. He's going to want some sort of guarantees. And at that point, now what are you going to do with Justin Fields? And that's where this shit gets interesting. And it's a good position to be in if you're the Steelers, but it's also a tough one. It's also a tough one, but we'll see what happens. I digress. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 407th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time, which will be Wednesday. This is going to be another crazy week. I'll explain on Wednesday night, or it'll probably be Wednesday afternoon, rather, because I'll be live for the Command Post live on Wednesday night. So this podcast will probably be around our normal slot, which is, that 4 o'clock, 4:30, 4:45 range. But we'll talk about, the happenings. Then I'll probably talk a little bit about, March Madness and the Sweet 16 and kind of get you ready. I'm pretty sure by then we'll have some clarity on some of these other rules that have been proposed, and they would have voted, and we would have a little bit more of an answer there. And we'll kind of get to all of that stuff on Wednesday. So we'll clean up and tie up any loose ends then. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Until then, you guys take care. God bless. Good night.